Chapter 1, Rebirth. Rain Country, Ling Clan residence in Grey Cloud Town. The moon has passed the middle of the night sky. Ling Han spent exactly 10 seconds to confirm one fact: he truly had been reincarnated. Spending 10 seconds just to confirm a fact was extremely inconceivable to a strong person from the heaven tier, but at the same time, it also proved that what had happened to him was just as inconceivable. In his previous life, he stood at the summit of martial arts and had completely unprecedented achievements in the art of alchemy. The three-fire guide that he had invented had even caused a revolution in the field of theory of alchemy, and he was respectfully titled Alchemy Emperor. Still, he was unsatisfied and thought of further advancement, to reach the legendary Shattering Void tier, to shatter the void, and become immortal. As such, he visited innumerable ancient sites and finally entered Black Blood Valley, overcoming various dangerous obstacles before he discovered an ancient tower. He was not to be disappointed, for golden words appeared on the ancient tower and revealed what was a scroll with supreme skills, named Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Training in it to the highest level would allow creation of a body that neither ages or decays, to coexist with the sky and the earth and to have the same lifespan as the sun and the moon. However, despite being a warrior who has reached the heaven tier, Ling Han still felt that Indestructible Heaven Scroll was extremely obscure and difficult to comprehend, feeling as if he was reading a heavenly book completely at a loss. He forced himself to memorize this collection of supreme skills, and was just about to investigate the ancient tower when the tower jolted slightly, exuding a pillar of heavenly light that instantly shattered his mortal body. However, the strange thing was, his spirit did not actually disperse and entered a state of semi-consciousness, which lasted for more than 10,000 years. In these 10 millennia, his spirit was immersed in analyzing the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. He couldn't do anything else during that time anyway. Finally, he comprehended the first layer of the supreme skills described in the scroll. To spend 10,000 years to comprehend only the first layer of a scroll containing skills despite being a warrior of the heaven tier, what kind of concept was that? A warrior of the heaven tier only had the lifespan of less than 1,000 years. Thus, in a normal situation, there would be no one in this world that could fully learn the contents of Indestructible Heaven Scroll because, before one had even started comprehending it, they would die of old age first. Yet Ling Han, through this strange occurrence, grasped the first layer of Indestructible Heaven Scroll, and he was now suddenly reincarnated and reborn in the body of a 16-year-old young man that shared the same name, Ling Han. It was extremely inconceivable. No matter how it happened, I am reborn. Although this body has only reached the second layer of body refining tier, and couldn't be any more trashy than this, I was once a warrior of the heaven tier, standing at the top of martial Dao, and a grandmaster of alchemy. If the body's condition is poor, then I shall use medicinal pills to compensate for its shortcomings. I do not believe I will not be able to return to the top. Moreover, I can finally train in the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. This is a collection of supreme skills, so powerful that, it may not be from this mortal plane, but from the legendary immortal plane instead. Otherwise, how is it possible for me to spend 10,000 years and only grasp the first layer? In this life, I will definitely be able to exceed all those who came before, and become immortal. Additionally, what is the matter with this body? 16 years old, and yet the guy had only reached the second layer of body refining tier? Could it be that the martial Dao of the current time is dying? Bang! Along with an explosion-like sound, uncountable memories flooded his mind. They belonged to the other Ling Han, and thus were the memories of the original owner of this body. Through this process, two completely different minds melded together and formed one, no longer separate from each other. I see. Ling Han nodded in his thoughts. The reason why he was only at the second layer of the body refining tier was because his spirit base was of a too poor quality. The prerequisite to train as a warrior was that one needed to have a spirit base. Only with a spirit base could one absorb the spiritual chi from heaven and earth, train one's body and transform the spiritual chi into their own origin power. Some types of spirit bases absorb the spiritual chi quickly and some absorb it more slowly. To differentiate between them, spirit bases were categorized into 4 major grades: heaven, earth, black and yellow. Every major grade was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium and low. The best type was the heaven grade high level, and the poorest type was the yellow grade low level. The grade of spirit base was decided by its purity. The purer it was, the better. Ling Han's spirit base was in utter disarray, containing all 5 elements. In the world of martial arts, this was the worst type of spirit base. It could barely be considered yellow grade low level. It was the reason why he had only reached the 2nd layer of body refining tier at his age of 16, while others of the same age had at least reached the 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han in his previous life possessed a heaven grade spirit base, which was also a high level one, the 9 yang fire spirit base. In addition to that, he had an incomparable talent in the art of alchemy and used pills to support his cultivation, spending only 200 years to reach the heaven tier, something never achieved by anyone else in the past. 5 elements disarray spirit base. This is the lowest level of a spirit base. No wonder my predecessor only reached the 2nd layer of body refining tier no matter how much he worked and trained. To me, this 5 elements disarray spirit base is a bit of a problem, but with alchemical pills, I will need only 4 years to return to the top at most. Ling Han exclaimed in his heart, and his face showed an expression of disbelief and utmost surprise. Using his extremely strong mental prowess to once again peer at the spirit base in his dantian, he was stunned for a moment. Then, shock gave way to exuberant joy, showing on his face. This isn't the 5 elements disarray spirit base. The 5 elements are actually in complete balance and form the shape of a lotus. That means, this is the 5 elements mix chaos lotus, the best of the best, even rarer than the 9 yang fire spirit base. This is the spirit base hailed as the spirit base of the immortal grade. My predecessor had slow progress, but it was because immortal grade spirit base requires specialized skills to realize its true prowess. And, it just so happens that I have hold of skills that suit this 5 elements mix chaos lotus, the 5 elements heaven grade skill. 100 years. No, I only need 50 years, and I can once again reach the heaven tier. Even with his status as a warrior of the heaven tier from his previous life, Ling Han couldn't control his expression, now full of joy. The spirit base was something one was born with. There was no way to change it at all. In his previous life, to shatter the empty void and become immortal, he had visited various ancient sites and obtained many different types of secret arts and cultivation techniques. The 5 elements heaven grade skill was one of them. In his previous life, he stood at the top of the martial world, and in this life, he would once again bask in glory and create an undying legend. How did my predecessor die? Ling Han flipped through his memories, and anger quickly appeared on his face. His predecessor was the only son of the Ling clan's head, Ling Dongxing. His mother and grandparents had all passed away very early on. The Ling clan was a clan of martial artists. Every clan member knew martial arts, and was proud of the fact. So, how did someone like Ling Dongxing become the clan head? That was because he was the strongest and had reached his position through battling. But Ling Han was regarded as trash since his childhood because of the issue with his spirit base, and had received much ridicule from those around him. He believed that there would definitely be some gains. He then went to the foreign realm and visited the dimensions one by one to see if there were any results while distributing more testing devices. One had to have a long-term vision. After arriving at a medium-level dimension, Ling Han finally received good news. Such a person had finally been discovered. This made Ling Han overjoyed, and he hurriedly went to take a look. This was a young man, and his natural talent in cultivation was very high. At present, he was under the tutelage of an 8th heaven celestial king. He had already reached the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, and was about to advance to the celestial king tier. When they had first discovered him, he had been just a little kid in his teens, and he had been able to reach the peak stage of the ascending origin tier in 100 million years. This cultivation speed was not low at all. This young man's name was Ba Tai. Ling Han taught him what to do, and the two of them extended their divine senses, entering into each other's minds to touch that speck of light. Ling Han had already obtained the life code in his ball of light. There was no need for him to comprehend anymore. Instead, it was up to Ba Tai. A few days later, although Ba Tai did not unlock the secret of his own sphere of light, he gave all the information he had obtained to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, and gave Ba Tai a large amount of cultivation resources. This brat might enjoy endless development in the future, so it was better to nurture him. He began to enter seclusion to digest the information he had obtained. Very slowly, it took Ling Han several million years before he was able to analyze the profound secrets contained within. He revealed a satisfied smile and filled in a few more holes in the secret code of life. Boom! In his body, every dimension was undergoing drastic changes. Previously, there was only grass that was less than an inch tall, but now it was growing sturdily, reaching a foot in length. Furthermore, they were no longer pure green in color. Instead, there were green, blue, purple, and red. They were all colorful, showing a variety of hues. Although there were still only plants, Ling Han's dimensions had made great progress in their level of existence. Every dimension was exuding vigorous life energy that was nourishing the said dimension. This speed was comparable to Ling Han's full efforts at cultivation. If he obtained a few more secret codes of life, wouldn't his cultivation speed be able to soar? Ling Han's biggest headache was the dimensions in his body. Although they gave him powerful battle prowess, they also hindered his advancement. However, if this problem could be solved now, then it would be perfect. Most importantly, these dimensions were growing on their own. He didn't need to spend any effort at all. Great! Ling Han did not take Ba Tai as his disciple, but still brought him to the profound negative realm. In this place, Ba Tai had even more room for growth. He continued to travel through the various dimensions. After having gained once, his confidence soared, and he naturally became even more proactive. Heaven had truly blessed him. In the next few million years, he met two more prodigies like this. One was called Ma Qinggao, and the other was Feyue. At first glance, there was nothing special about them, but one had a particularly powerful divine sense, and the other had outstanding talent in formations. Ling Han went into seclusion for a long time, and once again digested these two secret codes of life. Of course, Ma Qinggao and Feyue were also brought to the profound negative realm by him. No matter what, they were still worth nurturing. After Ling Han digested these two secret codes of life, the dimensions in his body underwent another drastic change. These were two abnormally rapid evolutions, causing birds and beasts to appear in every dimension. From plants to animals, this was naturally an incomparably drastic evolution with huge changes. I have only just started training in it, and have already felt such remarkable effects. Yet this is completely different from other types of cultivation techniques. Ordinary cultivation techniques make use of the spirit base to absorb spiritual chi from the sky and the earth to transform into origin power. An indestructible heaven scroll is the exact opposite, using origin power to refine the body and heal injuries. Once my training reaches the highest level, achieving immortality may not be impossible. That is why it is called Heaven Scroll. Unfortunately, the level now is not enough, otherwise I could use indestructible Heaven Scroll to heal my spirit base. Ling Han opened his eyes and, looking at the growing light outside his window, murmured softly, "Now, I shall go and meet with Ling Zhongquan, that shameless old man, and give him a surprise." He put on his shoes, walked towards the doorway and opened the door. In the doorway was a tall figure, blocking his advance. This man's name was Zhang Yuan, one of Ling Zhongquan's lackeys. "Young Master Han, Chief Butler has commanded that you have to stay in your room today," Zhang Yun said with a laugh. Although the person in front of him was the Sun the clan head, he was also a notorious piece of trash, and just a joke in his eyes. Ling Han's gaze grew cold, and said, "You dare hinder me?" It was exactly that. The chief butler had told him that he couldn't allow Ling Han to come out and get in their way at all costs. If things come to head, he even had the permission to attack him. Thus, Zhang Yun smiled falsely and said, "This is a command from the chief butler. Young Master Han, please do not make things difficult for me. Ling Zhongquan, this old dog, is truly cautious. He has seriously wounded me and still feels insecure, going so far as to assign someone to guard the door, Ling Han thought. This also showed how important it was to Ling Zhongquan for his grandson to enter Huyang Academy. If this hope was shattered, Ling Zhongquan's despair and fury could be imagined. Get out of my way. Ling Han spoke coldly. Young Master Han, this was ordered by the chief, but dash. Pa. Ling Han raised his hand and gave him a slap, speaking coldly, what are you doing? I told you to get out of my way, and you don't? What? He had actually received a slap from a piece of trash. Zhang Yuan covered his face in disbelief. This piece of trash actually dared to resist him. What kind of joke was this? He was furious, and recalled Ling Zhongquan's words from before. If things come to head, he had permission to attack. He could not stop his hate from rising, and said thickly, Young Master Han, this is what you have forced me to dash. Pa. Ling Han raised his hand once more, and gave him another solid slap. Chapter 2, Might. Zhang Yuan was about to go crazy. He had actually received 2 slaps from a piece of trash. In his fury, he did not consider how a piece of trash at only 2nd layer of body refining tier could slap someone at 4th layer of body refining tier twice. Opening his mouth to release a great roar, he pounced at Ling Han. There was only one thought in his head now, and that was to ruthlessly beat up this piece of trash. His one punch was filled with great power, bringing with it a slight breeze as it headed towards his target. Ling Han was oddly calm and immobile. In his previous life, he could naturally get rid of 10,000 of Zhang Yuan with a flick of his fingers, but now he only had the power of the 2nd layer of body refining tier. The difference in strength was a bit problematic, but that was it. The one controlling this body was, after all, a former warrior of the heaven tier. His strength may have been lost, but his insight remained. Zhang Yuan only needed to raise his hand or move his leg, and Ling Han would be able to deduce where his punch would be heading towards and where his feet would be moving to. As a result, by the time Zhang Yuan's punch flew out, Ling Han had already reacted. Who? The fist had hit its target and Zhang Yuan revealed a cold grin. Once hit with his punch, its overwhelming power would instantly cause Ling Han to lose all means of resistance, leaving him completely at his opponent's mercy. He had hit his target. N. Zhang Yuan's face revealed his surprise. Although his punch appeared to have hit Ling Han's face, it had actually missed by a slight margin. Ling Han managed to take a step back in time and just barely managed to dodge his fist. His fist stopped exactly in front of the tip of Ling Han's nose. It was almost touching it, so perfectly calculated as if he had used a ruler to carefully measure the distance. It must be a coincidence, Zhang Yuan thought in his heart. And it was at this moment that Ling Han's palm once more flew towards him. Pa! A loud, crisp noise was heard, and Zhang Yuan received another solid slap. Damn it! Zhang Yuan spat out a mouthful of spit, let out a loud shout, and once again launched his fist, punching towards Ling Han. Who? Zhang Yuan's fist once again missed. It was as if Ling Han moved at the same moment as his upper body flew backwards. Using both hands to push himself off the ground, his right foot automatically kicked out, hitting the spot in between Zhang Yuan's legs with a soft sound. AO dash. Even if his cultivation was at the 4th layer of body refining tier, it didn't matter, would still be unable to have the ability, iron balls, and this kick had hit its target solidly. Zhang Yuan suddenly dropped down onto his knees, both hands gripping his crotch as large droplets of cold sweat appeared on his face. You're so treacherous. Zhang Yuan twitched, his whole face was so twisted it looked inhuman. Pa! Ling Han once again gave him a slap. Zhang Yuan's mouth opened, and spat out a few broken teeth. Ling Han naturally had no sympathy for him, and said, a dog will always be a dog. As expected, it would not be able to spit out ivory. Zhang Yuan was extremely furious. He had actually been made to kneel on the ground and received a violent slap from someone at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. What kind of humiliation was this? He wanted to counterattack, but the kick that his privates received had directly removed all his power to resist. Every move he took made his balls hurt in agony. But he definitely couldn't allow Ling Han to ruin Ling Zhongquan's important business. Otherwise, if he couldn't complete the task that the other had assigned him, going by Ling Zhongquan's character, he would definitely be killed. Han, young Master Han, listen to me, you can't leave this place. Actually, you have been poisoned. Once you leave this room, you will die of poison. His thoughts were anxious, so he tried to quickly think of something that would make Ling Han stay here. Ling Han could not help but smile. Did he think that this kind of terrible acting would be able to deceive him? He flew up and kicked Zhang Yuan away. He didn't have any free time to waste on this lackey. He had to stop Ling Zhongquan's evil scheme from succeeding instead. Otherwise, his father would have risked his life only to benefit others. As for Zhang Yuan, Ling Han naturally would not take this kind of minor character into consideration. After all, Ling Zhongquan only needed to see him appear, and would naturally come to deal with Zhang Yuan. He had no need to dirty his own hands. Don't go. Don't go. Zhang Yuan's sobs and pleas spread out from behind him. It was as if he could already see his own miserable end. Accomplice to a villain, he only had himself to blame, and didn't deserve the slightest bit of sympathy. Ling Han strode forwards. After a few minutes, he arrived at the inner doorway to the living room. He hadn't stepped in yet but already could hear a loud, aged voice, "Miss Lu, please, please." The living room had an inner and outer doorway. The inner doorway was connected to the inner court, while the outer doorway would lead to the main door. Looking out through the curtains, he could see a group of 5 walking in. The group comprised of 5 people, 4 male, 1 female. Aside from the young woman, Ling Han could recognize the 4 men. They were all Ling clan clansmen. One of them was an elderly man, the chief butler, Ling Zhongquan. 2 of the other 3 were middle-aged men of around 40 years, both Ling Zhongquan's sons. The last one was a young man, older than Ling Han by about 1 or 2 years, and that was none other than Ling Zhongquan's eldest grandson, Ling Muyuan. Ling Han looked towards the only female in the group. Even with his eyesight from his previous life as one at the heaven tier, his eyes brightened. This young woman was truly beautiful. Her looks were like autumn, her skin as fair as the moon. She seemed to be only 17 or 18, but already possessed an elegant demeanor and beauty that could bring disaster to country and people. It was just that her aura was as cold as if she was an icy mountain, driving away any who dared to approach. This young girl would certainly be the person sent by Huyang Academy. What a coincidence. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. He had discovered something even more coincidental, and his lips couldn't help but reveal a smile. Both parties sat separately in their positions as guest and host. A few maidservants came forwards to serve fragrant tea and stood respectfully at the sides of the 5 people's seats. Has the person from the Ling clan that you are sending to the academy gotten ready? Lu Yutong opened her mouth and spoke, her voice both cold and melodious, with a bit of disdain. What she hated the most were people who would enter the academy through the back door. Although she was commanded to come here, she had no good feelings towards this future younger brother disciple. Ready, ready. Ling Zhongquan hurriedly spoke. Although he was old enough to be the young girl's grandfather, both parties were of the same level, element gathering tier. One's skill in martial arts did not depend on age. Only the strong would be respected. Ling Zhongquan even had a feeling that this young girl's level was slightly higher than his own. He was at the 6th layer of element gathering tier, while this girl could be of the 7th layer, or maybe even 8th. This also caused him to be even more eager to send his own grandson to Huyang Academy. In a few years, he would be of an even higher level than Ling Dongxing and help him snatch the position of the clan head. Mu Yun, quickly come and greet your elder sister disciple Lu. The old man turned and spoke to Ling Muyuan. Yes, grandfather. Ling Muyun spoke with great respect. Cupping his hands in Lu Yutong's direction, he said, Muyun greets elder sister disciple Lu. There was heat in his gaze. He felt wild ambition when looking upon this cold, beautiful and incomparably strong beauty. He believed that, with enough time spent together, he would be able to capture the heart of the beauty. Lu Yutong was slightly surprised. She recalled that the person from Ling clan she was to escort was named Ling Han. However, it was none of her business. She was only responsible for bringing a person from the Ling clan back to the academy. "Since you're ready, then let's depart," she said calmly. "Miss Lu, why don't you stay for a few days in our humble abode, so that we can express a small bit of our gratitude?" Ling Zhongquan hurriedly said. He wanted to get close to this young girl, and in the future, she would also be able to take care of his grandson. "No need." Lu Yutong rejected coldly, turned and was about to leave. "Please wait," a voice was heard, and Ling Han strode out. The faces of Ling Zhongquan and his group changed slightly. However much they looked down on this piece of trash of the Ling clan, they were the thieves right now, and thieves would naturally feel guilty. "Younger brother Han, weren't you injured? Return quickly to your room to rest," Ling Mu Yun reacted the quickest. He shot forwards and reached Ling Han's side, extending his hand. He wanted to fall upon Ling Han at the first moment, without giving the other any opportunity to open his mouth. He was at the 7th layer of body refining tier, and his strength was not something Zhang Yuan could compare to. Chapter 3, You're sick, I can heal you. There were altogether 9 layers of the body refining tier. The 1st to 3rd layers were usually called the early stage of body refining tier, 4th to 6th levels were the middle stage, and 7th to 9th levels were the late stage. Martial artists from 3 different stages had a great disparity in their strength. And the higher the layer, the larger the disparity was. A martial artist at the 9th layer facing a martial artist at the 8th layer would have an overwhelming advantage. However, a martial artist at the 1st layer of body refining tier against a martial artist from the 2nd layer would not be at such a large disadvantage. Previously, Ling Han seemed to be only 2 layers below Zhang Yuan, but there was a major disparity of 1 stage between them. However, Ling Mu Yun was at the 7th layer of body refining tier, and was of the late stage of body refining tier higher than Ling Han by 2 stages. This was an unbreachable gap. Even if Ling Han had once been one of the strongest heaven tier warriors, he would still be unable to breach this huge difference in ability. After all, the base he had now was too low. So what to do? Ling Han's eyes grew serious, and taking advantage of the moment the other's palm was heading towards him, he suddenly raised his fist in an attack. Ling Mu Yun could not help showing an expression of ridicule. Although he didn't know how Ling Han managed to come here, he was a well-known piece of trash amongst the whole of Ling clan. What kind of threat could he be to himself? He circulated origin power, and his chest muscles hardened, becoming as dense as iron. So what if he received a hit from Ling Han? The important thing now was to restrict Ling Han and not allow him the chance to open his mouth. Sure enough. The corners of Ling Han's mouth curved in a slight smile. The other's reaction was completely within his expectations. You're about to suffer this time. Pung. Because Ling Mu Yun did not make any move to dodge, this sudden punch hit its target solidly. Ling Mu Yun still looked disdainful as he extended his hand and placed it on Ling Han's shoulder. Young brother Han, I'll send you back. He hadn't finished speaking before he spat out a mouthful of blood. This wasn't even the end. He felt his chest was boiling, as if he was about to throw up all his internal organs. He suddenly fell and sat down on the ground, his expression extremely ugly. Teng, 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 Ling Han retreated a total of 7 steps. He stopped once his back met the wall behind him. What was this? Ling Han had used a special technique in that punch. Its name was Hill Separating Shock. It allowed power to pass through the opponent's defenses before exploding, which was why although Ling Mu Yun had used origin power to defend, Ling Han's power still managed to pass through his muscles and explode inside his body. Naturally, it became an extremely heavy blow to Ling Mu Yun. This was also thanks to the fact that Ling Mu Yun was at the 7th layer of body refining tier. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured by this punch. Even death would not be an impossibility. To look down upon one of the strongest of the heaven-tier warriors was to bring trouble onto oneself. Still, 7th layer of body refining tier was still 7th layer of body refining tier. The rebound of origin power was still far from what Ling Han could handle. Thus, he too had been jarred to the point that he staggered and retreated. Due to the shock of power, his right arm was suddenly dislocated. Ka! Ling Han did not even wrinkle his brow and used his left hand to twist his right arm back into position. It wasn't until that moment that Ling Zhongquan and his group finally reacted. They were all angered and shocked. Their anger was because Ling Han had actually wounded Ling Muyun, while their shock was because they were wondering, how had this piece of trash managed to accomplish such a feat? Meanwhile, the few maidservants were even more dumbfounded. Was this still the young Master Han they knew? How could he be so fierce that, with one punch, he had injured young Master Mu Yun, who has always been known as a genius, to the point that the latter was throwing up blood? Little beast, how dare you be so ruthless? Ling Zhongquan immediately shouted. Mu Yun was only worried about you and wanted to send you back to your room, yet you did something so ruthless, you crazy dog. He sure was sly, immediately making a verbal counterattack through false accusation. Ling Mu Yun too regained his breath. When his eyes fell upon Ling Han, they were filled with murder. Was the genius of the Ling clan, and yet he was actually injured by a piece of trash. How could his ego accept such a blow? Ling Han completely ignored the two, and instead looked at Lu Yutong. Miss, you're sick. This. Ling Zhongquan was about to make a move, but when he heard these words, he forcefully held back. The other was a student from Huyang Academy, and Huyang Academy was established by the imperial family of Rain Country. Those who managed to enroll there would definitely have come from a strong, huge background, and would be something that far exceed the background of a person at element gathering tier. However, Ling Han actually said that the other was sick. Was he seeking death? Very good, now implicate Ling Dongxing too, Chief Butler thought. Someone would do his dirty work for him and he would be able to easily take the position of clan head. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ling Dongxing, Ling Dongxing, you would never have thought that your son is not only a piece of trash, but also someone who will ruin you. When Lu Yutong looked at Ling Han, her eyes revealed slight disgust. She was born very beautiful, and was also the princess of one of the 8 great clans of the imperial city, the Lu clan. The Lu clan was an existence that was only below the imperial family in status, and naturally, she did not lack any number of young men who tried to ingratiate themselves with her. Some would even try the opposite, pretending to be cold to attract her interest. She naturally thought that Ling Han was the same sort of pest, only that he was using the method of cursing her. This was the first time that she had encountered this tactic, but this did not give her any feeling of novelty, only disgust. How dare you! Ling Zhongquan was an observant man, and shouted in a timely manner, kneel down quickly and apologize to Miss Lu. Ling Han gave a calm smile. In this world, aside from my parents, I will kneel down to no one. Looking at Lu Yutong, he walked towards her. He stopped once he was about 3 steps away. That was because he knew this was the limit of the other's patience. If he went any closer, she would definitely take action. He didn't want to be hit one bit. Since you were 10, have you been fainting every year for no reason? In the beginning, it was once a year, but it has become more and more frequent. At present, you should be fainting once every 10 days, Ling Han spoke with a lowered voice, only allowing Lu Yutong alone to hear his words. Lu Yutong's expression changed. This illness of hers was only known to a few select people, even in the Lu clan. How did Ling Han manage to find out about it? She couldn't refrain from once again sizing up Ling Han as she asked, "You know the reason?" Naturally. Ling Han proudly nodded. Otherwise, he would not speak such shocking words. It's 3 vanishing veins. It's a kind of curse from the gods. Those who possess the 3 vanishing veins would usually only be able to live until 20. That's because during your 20th year, you will once again fall unconscious, forever unable to regain consciousness. Lu Yutong was silent, but she believed Ling Han's words because after her symptoms became more and more serious, her family had brought her to visit many famous doctors. However, every doctor she visited could not do anything, and didn't even know the name of the illness. Still, one of them deduced that she would faint more and more frequently and, one day, she would no longer wake up. Now, she had finally found out what illness she had, but what of it? All the famous doctors in Rain Country could not do anything, so she naturally would not think that Ling Han had any way to help. I can heal you, Ling Han said at that very moment. Lu Yutong's heart trembled, but her face did not reveal anything. If you can heal me, I can allow you to become a court official, or even let you have uncountable resources for cultivation. Ling Han mustered a smile. There is only one way to heal the 3 vanishing veins, and that is to train in 3 mysterious arts, and it just so happens that I know this art. I can teach you, but there is one condition: you have to become my follower. Lu Yutong could not restrain anger in her heart. She was the princess of the Lu clan, and was also a genius in martial arts. At the age of 17, she had already reached the 8th layer of element gathering tier. And now a puny little martial artist at 2nd layer of body refining tier actually wanted to take her in as a follower? Where did he get his confidence and boldness from? Don't feel wronged, because I can give you a wider horizon. I can let you rise to a higher level in martial arts. The 7 great vanishing lands, the 4 great dead valleys, the 3 great bottomless oceans, have you seen them before? Ling Han's sweet temptation followed. Although the 3 vanishing veins were a curse in nature, there was always hope in every situation. Their owner would also usually possess a heaven-grade spirit base. Once trained in 3 mysterious arts, the owner would naturally soar. Lu Yutong could not stop eagerness from rising within her heart. She had a passionate desire to pursue martial arts, and it was the focus of everything in her life. Chapter 4, The First Command. Lu Yutong was affected in her heart, but to agree to become Ling Han's follower was an impossible request. Biting her red lips slightly, she spoke, "Change your condition." Ling Han smiled slightly. "You should be at the top of the 8th layer of element gathering tier, right? I'll gift you 2 verbal chants to show my sincerity. 3 supporting element, plan of square path. 3 flowers assemble at the apex, shattering the approach of heaven." At first, Lu Yutong was not concerned. This brat was only at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. What kind of shocking verbal chant could he know? He was most likely only pretending to be mysterious. But when she heard these 2 verbal chants, the origin energy within her body began to stir without reason, as if the door to the 9th level of element gathering tier was opening. She was moved. Although she knew that she would be able to break through to the 9th level of element gathering tier, but the estimated time should be around a month later. However, she had a strong feeling that now she only needed about a day. No, even right at this moment, she could enter seclusion and proceed to break through. This was too much. It was just 2 verbal chants, and yet they had so much effect on her. Those were 2 verbal chants from 3 mysterious art. How is it? Ling Han smiled. Consecutively, he raised his voice and said, "Become my follower, and I will teach you supreme godly skills." Pooh! Ling Zhongquan and group puffed, unable to hold back their hearty laughter any longer. What could be more hilarious than this? Just a piece of trash, and he wanted to have a genius from Huyang Academy become his follower? And even said he would teach her supreme godly skills. Such bragging skills and guts were truly remarkable, and probably the only thing supreme and godly amongst his skills. The idiot had no measure of his own ability. It was such a joke. The maidservants covered their small mouths. They too knew Ling Han's background and, looking at the attitude that Ling Zhongquan displayed towards Lu Yutong, knew of how noble a status this young girl was. Lu Yutong's expression turned cold, and suddenly she had arrived in front of Ling Han. Her right hand flashed out and held his neck. "Recite 3 mysterious arts, or else I will kill you," she coldly said. Since Ling Han dared to ask such a thing from Lu Yutong, he naturally foresaw such a reaction from her, so he only smiled and said, "Then kill me, I wouldn't need to wait too long before I see you on the path to the netherworld. We can be travel companions at that time." Lu Yutong's hold tightened. Although her 5 fingers looked small and smooth, but at this moment, they seemed like iron claws, strangling Ling Han to the point of suffocation. Soon, his face turned red, and his eyes became bloodshot. Ling Han's 4 limbs started to twitch violently. Ling Zhongquan and his companions had no intention of interfering. In fact, their deepest hope was to have Lu Yutong kill Ling Han. "Are you going to say it or not?" Lu Yutong slightly loosened her grip. Ling Han forced out a smile, and shook his head determinedly. The current Ling clan was an extremely dangerous place to him. He had to find a strong bodyguard, and would not agree to whatever else Lu Yutong suggested to him. He had to make her his protector. What he lacked now was time. As long as he had the time he needed to become stronger, what did a mere Ling clan count as? Lu Yutong once again tightened her grip, and Ling Han's body started to twitch violently before his 4 limbs suddenly drooped. There was no more movement. How stubborn. Lu Yutong sighed internally, and her origin power rushed out and restarted Ling Han's heartbeat. Exhaling, Ling Han once again opened his eyes, and took in large mouthfuls of air. 3 years. Lu Yutong said, "No more than 3 years, and within these 3 years, I will obey your commands." 3 years later, she would be 20 years old. If she would not lose consciousness and no longer awaken, then she would be completely free. Pooh! Ling Zhongquan and his group once again made a snort-like sound with their mouths, but this time, it was because of their great shock. They were completely at a loss. Was there some problem with their hearing? They seemed to have heard Lu Yutong assent. Assent to become Ling Han's follower? To become an underling of a piece of trash? This, they must have heard wrongly. Definitely so. Ling Han came back to attention and smiled, before raising his hand. Deal. 3 years would be long enough for him to mature. At least, it would be long enough for him to rise above the level of Ling Zhongquan and his groupies. He would no longer have to worry about any threat to his life. Pa. Lu Yutong extended her hand as well, and joined it with his upraised palm. This was a promise between martial artists. What a delicate hand. When their palms were joined together, Ling Han could not help but feel his heart stir. Although he was once a strong warrior of the Heaven Tier, and furthermore, the Alchemy Emperor, and there were uncountable beautiful women who threw themselves at him in his previous life, since his soul had melded with his predecessors, it was as if he too had returned to a youthful, impulsive age. The passion that he had not experienced for a long time was burning inside his body, making him feel as if he truly had returned to the age of 16 years old. Ling Han enjoyed this kind of change. This was what living meant. "Miss Lu, don't listen to the nonsense this little beast is spouting, let's return to discussing official matters," Ling Zhongquan interrupted. He didn't want Ling Han to continue making mess out of things. And that Zhang Yuan, he truly was an idiot. He couldn't even keep proper watch over a piece of trash. Once he returned, he'd make sure to kill him. "Chief Butler," Ling Han coldly looked at him, "this position in Huyang Academy is what my father risked his own life to obtain. Now my father is risking his life in Purple Light Ground Valley, and yet you shamelessly attempt to snatch this position. Don't you feel your face burning? Impudence, how dare you speak to me this way?" Ling Zhongquan suddenly shouted. Lu Yutong previously did not bother about such a matter, but since she now had a deal with Ling Han, her attitude naturally changed. "Butler Ling, what is going on here? I need an explanation." Ling Zhongquan could pretend he did not hear Ling Han's words, but he definitely would not be able to do the same with Lu Yutong's words. Not only was she the representative of Huyang Academy, her own ability was above his. What right did he have to ignore Lu Yutong's words? He hurriedly said, "It's like this boy is the son of Ling clan head, Ling Dongxing." Thus, Ling Dongxing became selfish, and wanted to give this placement privately to this boy. "I'm only thinking of the big picture, to make the most out of this precious position." What grand words, thinking of the big picture. Ling Han smiled coldly. "Ling Zhongquan, are you completely without shame? This position was obtained by my father, who is risking his life even now as we speak. What does it have to do with the clan? Why do you need to concern yourself with it? You only want to give this position to your own grandchild, and in future, when his level exceeds my father's, he would be able to help you seize the position of clan head. You want to do such a shameless thing, yet claim to be doing it out of loyalty to the clan. What a shameless dog." Having received such a big, hearty scolding from Ling Han, Ling Zhongquan was furious to the point that his whole body was trembling. He had even come close to spitting out blood in anger. "Little beast, how dare you insult me this way?" Ling Zhongquan was filled with wrath. He was actually scolded by a piece of trash. If he could not heavily punish Ling Han, he would definitely be angered to the point of internal injury. Ling Han only calmly smiled, and turned to Lu Yutong. "I have completely zero interest in enrolling at Huyang Academy. The agreement about the position is cancelled. In exchange, let Huyang Academy compensate me with some medicinal potions." "Agreed." Lu Yutong nodded. To expend all efforts to cultivate an individual student would, in the first place, require a large pool of medicinal potions. "No." Ling Zhongquan immediately shouted loudly. "This position belongs to Mu Yun, none of you can steal it away. Old dog, is there something wrong with your hearing? This position was obviously obtained by my father, what does it have to do with you?" Ling Han scoffed. Then he looked at Lu Yutong, saying, "Now, this is my first command for you." He paused for a moment before saying, "Restrain this old dog for me, I want to give a few good slaps to this shameless old bastard." Lu Yutong only hesitated for a moment before she nodded. "All right." Ling Han had already expressed his sincerity by gifting her 2 valuable verbal chants. Now, she too had to express her own sincerity. What? Lu Yutong truly agreed to become Ling Han's follower? The word follower seemed grand, but in truth, it was something like an attendant, a servant. A grand genius from Huyang Academy actually agreed to become someone else's follower. What was this inconceivable affair? But it was reality. Lu Yutong had already stood up, her beautiful eyes focused on Ling Zhongquan, and a fierce battle spirit exuded from her graceful figure. "Elder sister disciple Lu, don't be deceived by this brat." Ling Muyun yelled, his face filled with shock. He had no way to accept the fact that a talented, intelligent woman like Lu Yutong would actually be deceived by Ling Han's flowery words. Particularly when this stunning beauty was someone he wanted to do his utmost to pursue. Now, it was as if he had eaten 10,000 fleesh, felt completely suffocated. "Are you going to surrender, or will you wait for me to act?" Lu Yutong asked calmly. Chapter 5, Thrashing the Old Dog. Lu Yutong was absolutely confident. She was at the 8th layer of element gathering tier, while Ling Zhongquan was only at the 6th layer of element gathering tier. Even though there was only 2 layers difference between the two, one was from the late stage of element gathering, while the other was only in the middle stage. This was the difference of a major level. Ling Zhongquan was both shocked and angered. "Miss Lu, are you really going to help this little beast?" "Old dog, watch what you say," Ling Han said unhurriedly from the side. These words completely infuriated Ling Zhongquan and his companions. "You keep saying old dog this, old dog that, and yet you want others to watch their mouths? So the magistrate is free to burn down houses, yet the commoners are forbidden to even light lamps? Too overbearing." Ling Han smiled calmly. He was overbearing, but what of it? In his previous life, he was famous for sweeping his mistakes under the rug and helping those close to him no matter whether they were in the right or in the wrong. In front of outsiders, he would defend his people. Whoever was in the right or in the wrong, he'd discuss that behind closed doors later. Ling Zhongquan, his sons and grandson had gone much too far. With his personality, it'd be strange if he could tolerate such a thing. Lu Yutong did not respond. Her graceful figure flew out as if she was a goddess from heaven, both hands pressing onto Ling Zhongquan, without any ferocity and displaying a sense of unworldly beauty. However, Ling Zhongquan naturally did not feel this way. Cold sweat had already gathered on his forehead. He was in the middle stage of element gathering tier, but the other was in the late stage of that tier. This was an unbreachable gulf. But Ling Zhongquan definitely did not want to be thrashed by Ling Han, this piece of trash, even more so since the latter was a member of the younger generation. Thus, he had to resist with all his might. Even if resistance was futile, he would flee if it came to the worst. Pang! He launched the Ling clan's special skill, 3 flip hands, and advanced towards Lu Yutong. This was a martial skill from the medium level of yellow grade, and was also one of the 3 special skills belonging to the Ling clan. With these 3 skills, Ling clan became one of the 2 most powerful clans in Grey Cloud Town. The power of these skills was naturally fearsome. Unfortunately, his opponent happened to be Lu Yutong. Snapping of the plum hands. The icy beauty spat out lightly. Her small hands smoothly turned over, both as a clap and as a touch. Her movement was indescribably graceful, but its power was extremely fearsome. Her hands drew past, and Ling Zhongquan could only repeatedly retreat, his whole face turning red. Snapping of the plum hands, a martial skill from the high level of yellow grade. His cultivation was suppressed, his martial skills were suppressed. If there was any advantage that Ling Zhongquan could claim over his opponent, then that would be multiple years' worth of battle experience he had. But the problem was that Lu Yutong was a genius of martial Dao. Although she did not have adequate experience, she had a shocking battle comprehension ability that could completely compensate for her inferior battle experience. How could Ling Zhongquan not lose? Through only 50 or 60 moves, Ling Zhongquan was completely restrained. His dantian was restrained, his origin energy could not be circulated, and he was no stronger than a commoner. Grandfather. Father. Ling Mu Yun and the rest were all shouting. They wanted to rush forward but were too afraid of Lu Yutong's ability, and could only look at Ling Han with fury. They were completely devoid of any intention of self-reflecting, and only felt that it was all Ling Han's fault. If Ling Han had not appeared, then matters would have proceeded as they had planned. Ling Han looked at Lu Yutong, and said, "If you make a slight change to your battle style, you will be even more powerful. For example, during your 17th move, you only had to further lower your right hand, and with your left hand clapping 2 inches further forward, you would have already restrained your opponent." Lu Yutong had not been convinced at first. She only thought that Ling Han had found some kind of ancient treasury, and had thus obtained high-level secret arts. Thus, he was able to use 2 verbal chants to allow the barrier she faced to loosen, and make her soon be able to break through. But now that she recalled the previous battle, the expression on her face changed slightly. Ling Han was right, if she had done as he just said, she would have been able to end this battle much sooner. She could not help feeling a little reverence towards Ling Han. His insight was too fearsome. Ling Han smiled internally. Who was he? 10,000 years ago, he was considered a royal existence in the world of martial arts. Don't tell me that he would not be able to subdue a little girl. He walked towards Ling Zhongquan, and raised his right hand. Little beast, you dare. Ling Zhongquan glared. If he were to be thrashed by Ling Han, how would he face others in future? Pa! Ling Han's palm descended without any hesitation, giving Ling Zhongquan a heavy slap. See! The other 3 members of the Ling clan and the 5 maidservants simultaneously took in a breath of cold air. He actually did it. The Grand Chief Butler of the Ling clan was actually publicly slapped by a person everyone acknowledged as trash. SSS, no wonder this old dog has such thick skin, just hitting him hurts my hand, Ling Han said with bared teeth. This was natural. Body refining tier meant to use origin power to refine each part of the body and to allow every muscle to be filled with origin power. Every punch and kick would release a fearsome amount of power. Ling Zhongquan was already in the element gathering tier, and has already completely passed through the body refining tier. Thus, his face was naturally completely refined by origin power. Someone from the middle stage of body refining tier may not even able to truly injure him, and only cause him a small pain. To cause him to bleed would require the use of weapons. However, now it was no longer the issue of being injured, but of humiliation. Slapped by a piece of trash who was also a younger relative at the second layer of body refining tier, moreover, this was done in front of 5 maidservants. What kind of great humiliation was this? If this matter spread out, how would he be able to face others in future? Ling Zhongquan's eyes were about to spit fire. He shouted loudly, "Little beast, this matter would not end like this. You will definitely regret this, definitely. AI, you actually dare to threaten me in front of my follower, what stupidity." Ling Han sighed, and asked Lu Yutong, "Someone is threatening your master, what do you say we should do?" Lu Yutong's beautiful face twitched. She was the princess of the Lu clan, how could she be able to get used to being someone's follower? However, she was still someone who kept her promises, so she immediately asked, "Do you need me to kill him?" Hearing these words, the 2 sons of Ling Zhongquan and Ling Muyun were shocked. Ling Zhongquan was their backbone, the tree that held up their sky. If Ling Zhongquan died, then they too would lose all the power they had in the Ling clan. Ling Han shook his head with a smile. "This old dog belongs to my father, so my father should be the one to get rid of him." But, he snapped off a table leg, and weighed it in his hand. He will not be punished with death, but he will not be able to escape another punishment. Pung! He raised the table leg and smacked it on Ling Zhongquan's face. After a heavy sound rang out, Ling Zhongquan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood and broken teeth. "Old dog, my father is risking his life, yet you snatch away his hope. Don't you think you deserve some thrashing? You have your son and grandson, and my father doesn't? Yesterday, you counted on the fact that you were stronger than me, and cruelly beat me to the point of serious injury. Is this the kind of attitude an older relative should have? Since you are without shame, and don't want to act as an older relative, then why do I still have to bother thinking of your face and treat you as an elder?" Ling Han thrashed him as he talked. A few hits afterwards, Ling Zhongquan's hair was already all over the place, his face covered with blood. He had already lost at least half the teeth in his mouth. However, although Ling Zhongquan looked pitiful, it did not matter how serious his external injury was, as he would be able to recover from it quickly thanks to the powerful life energy of a martial artist. It had taken internal injury to actually endanger his life. Thus, Ling Han continued thrashing him cheerfully, completely unconcerned that he could actually beat the other to death. Ling Zhongquan no longer made any sound, but he swore in his heart that, in the future, when he had the ability to surpass Ling Dongxing, he would definitely tear this pair of father and son into pieces. "My hand's getting tired." Ling Han threw away the stick, and said, "Yutong, accompany me on a trip." Yutong?" Lu Yutong suddenly felt a shiver. This manner of address really gave her goosebumps. Chapter 6, Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Ling Han and Lu Yutong departed. Ling Muyun and others wanted to stop them but didn't dare to act. Even Ling Zhongquan was defeated. Who else in the Ling clan had the power to resist? None, unless Ling Dongxing returned, that is. However, even if Ling Dongxing returned, which side would he be on? That was obvious. The 5 maidservants had extremely colorful expressions. They have watched such an interesting show that it'd be enough for them to brag about for 3 years. "Where are we going?" Lu Yutong asked Ling Han after leaving the Ling clan grounds. "Heaven's Medicine Pavilion." Ling Han replied. Lu Yutong made an "oh." She thought that Ling Han would be prescribing her medicine. After all, she was a patient. The two walked quickly, and after only 10 minutes, they reached their destination. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a very powerful existence, and had a branch in every city in Rain Country. Whether there were any branches outside of Rain Country, Ling Han wasn't too sure due to his limited knowledge. Anyway, the variety of medicinal plants and pills in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion should be more than enough, as they should have every kind available on market. If something couldn't be bought there, then it definitely could not be bought in other places as well. Ling Han entered the pavilion and approached a counter. Behind it sat a very beautiful young girl. Seeing Ling Han walk over, she immediately stood up with a smile, and said, "Hello, my name is Xiao Tao. I'm honored to be of service." Her eyes focused on Lu Yutong for a moment. After all, this young girl was unusually beautiful, even she felt slightly captivated despite being female herself. Ling Han nodded, saying, "I would like to buy violet lotus grass, blue branch fruit, 100-year vermilion bamboo, red leaf potato, rotted leafed dead tree roots." Xiao Tao's face went completely blank. She had been working here for over 2 years, and yet had never heard even the names of these 5 medicinal plants. She stared blankly for a moment before saying, "Customers, I apologize, but I haven't even heard of these medicinal plants. Please wait for a moment, I will ask someone else on your behalf." "All right," Ling Han nodded. These 5 medicinal plants were indeed quite uncommon, because aside from using them to concoct the element heart recover spirit powder, they were very rarely used for other concoctions. And even though the element heart recover spirit powder was not a high-grade concoction, it was a medicine he created personally during his previous life. Although he had taught the formula to a few people, it may not have been passed down through the generations. After a while, they saw Xiao Tao and a middle-aged man around 30 years of age walk towards them. "Are you the one who's causing trouble?" The middle-aged man looked at Ling Han, his face filled with disdain. Ling Han frowned. "What do you mean, causing trouble?" "Bah, randomly naming some non-existent medicinal plants, isn't this purposely causing trouble?" The middle-aged man harumphed, his facial expression proclaiming silently, "Ha, I've seen through you." Ling Han asked, "Why do you think that I just randomly named some non-existent medicinal plants? Aren't you asking nonsense? I'm a grand alchemist from the medium level of yellow grade. Even I have never heard of these medicinal plants, so aren't you just randomly naming them? Get out of here." The middle-aged man waved his hand as if he was shooing away flies. His name was Ma Dejun, and he was indeed an alchemist at the medium level of yellow grade. There were other customers in the shop, and once they heard his words, they all let out an "oh" sound, their faces filled with respect. Alchemist was a very scarce and noble profession. There were 4 major grades in the profession: heaven, earth, black, yellow. Every grade was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium and low levels. However, even an alchemist from the medium level of the yellow grade was a welcomed and respected existence, someone all major powers would fight to have. It was like that also in Grey Cloud Town. There was only one alchemist of this rank, and he worked in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Usually, he didn't even need to concoct any medicinal pills. The purpose behind his presence was simply being an overseer. Thus, Ma Dejun naturally had enough of a reason to be prideful. Even Alchemist Ma has said so, this brat must indeed have come to cause trouble. What a joke, he actually came to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to misbehave. Where did this fool come from? Maybe he's come to please the audience? Everyone was on the side of Ma Dejun. An alchemist was an extremely noble existence, and thus their partiality was hardly surprising. Ling Han was slightly irritated, and said, "If you've never heard of them, that's because of your own lack of ability. How can you without any basis proclaim that others are just causing trouble? Go and ask for the most well-educated person in your shop, I shall speak to him. Who do you think you are to command me?" Ma Dejun similarly looked extremely unhappy. He had come out personally to expose him, so why was he still here, being a pest? Moreover, Ma Dejun was the person in charge of this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Who else would be better educated than him here? Naturally, that was excluding Grandmaster Zhu. The other was just here on a holiday when he suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and so was just borrowing this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion's facilities to concoct pills. Seeing this, the corners of Lu Yutong's lips slightly lifted, and looked a little expectant. She would not act this time. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a colossal existence. Even the imperial family of Rain Country would have to treat them with respect. She was only a member of the younger generation of the Lu clan, so she definitely could not accompany Ling Han to mess around in this place. Aren't you quite capable? Why are you being embarrassed now? Although she agreed to become Ling Han's follower, it was just temporary. Moreover, with her pride, that was something she was most unwilling to dote least at present. Thus, she really wanted to see Ling Han's embarrassed face. However cold a woman was, she would still want to retaliate when made unhappy. Get lost. Ma Dejun brushed off his hands, looking impatient. You won't regret this? Ling Han slowly said. Huh, what can you do to me? Ma Dejun felt unreasonably tickled. This young man actually dared to threaten him. The other people in the shop too looked as if they were watching a comedy. Was this young man a spoiled young master from some clan? However, even if he was the son of the clan head of either one of the two great clans, he would still not be qualified to stand against a medium-level alchemist of the yellow grade. Ling Han only smiled, and turned towards Lu Yutong. A feeling of despise flashed through Lu Yutong's heart. Was he going to ask her to take action again? However, she only heard Ling Han say, "Help me shout loudly, you've put too much Copper Valley sand." Do it 3 times, the louder the better. What did that mean? Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes widened, but when she saw the confidence on Ling Han's face, her heart trembled and she couldn't help but do as he told her. You've put too much Copper Valley sand. You've put too much Copper Valley sand. You've put too much Copper Valley sand. She was a person from the element gathering tier, so her shout was like a lion's roar. You're both crazy, chase them out of here. Ma Dejun furiously said to the 2 guards in the shop. Pung! A loud noise echoed out, as if something had exploded. Any alchemist would be able to tell that this noise was caused by an exploding furnace, something that every alchemist would experience. Tong, 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 tong. A series of footsteps was heard from upstairs. Very quickly, a white-haired elder appeared at the top of the staircase, and shot right in front of Lu Yutong like an arrow, excitedly asking, "How do you know that I've put in too much Copper Valley sand?" The elder's figure still had some traces of suffering from a furnace's explosion. His brow, beard, and hair were all partially burned and half his face was blackened with ashes. His clothes were likewise in disarray, covered in singes. Being intently stared at by such an old man, the odd feeling within Lu Yutong's heart could be imagined. But what caused her greater surprise was the silver emblem hanging on one side of the elder's chest. That was the sign of an alchemist, and silver represented black grade. One emblem represented low level. This elder was a low-level alchemist of the black grade. Goodness, this kind of existence, even in the great clans of the imperial city, would be considered a revered guest. Even the clan head of her Lu clan, faced with the other, would have to very politely address the other as Grandmaster. But now, this Grandmaster was actually looking at her with a fawning gaze, his face filled with the desire to seek knowledge. How would Lu Yutong not feel odd? She couldn't help looking at Ling Han. How many other mysteries was this young man hiding? Chapter 7, Grandmaster Zhu. Pooh. Seeing this scene, everyone in this medicine shop could not help exhaling sharply in shock. Even if there were some who did not know Grandmaster Zhu Hexian, they could tell from the silver emblem hanging on his breast that he was a low-level alchemist of the black grade. Black grade. To the common people, this was an indescribably noble identity that could be compared to the high-ranking court officials of the empire. It was even more noble a status than a mayor of a city enjoyed. But someone like this, a grandmaster, displayed such an expression just because of one word, how could they not be shocked? And the cause of everything was a young man. How was this possible? Many people were driven mad. This fact was something they couldn't accept, even if they shattered their heads. Ma Dejun particularly looked quite aghast. This Grand Master Zhu was an important personage in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch in Rain Country. He actually wasn't even able to see such a person normally. He had only heard of some of the others' affairs through rumors. So how could he not be shocked, seeing this expression on the Grand Master's face? Could it be that this brat was not here to cause trouble? Were the medicinal plants he named real? Ling Han sniffed a little, and said, "Well, you're quite clever, making a few changes to the formula for the wind and fire pill, using purple back bear pill, 1000 shred cane and black rock powder to replace a few of the more valuable ingredients. In this manner, there would not be much difference in the medicinal effects, yet production cost could be greatly lowered." "How did you know?" Zhu Hexian suddenly turned around and looked at Ling Han in shock, asking in a rough voice. This was his secret. He had planned on publicizing it only after he had succeeded, so as to give a good shock to some of his old friends and rivals. Ling Han's smile widened, and he said, "Naturally, I used my nose to sniff it out." "Are you a monster? You found out just by using your nose?" Pill formulae were an extremely valuable item, and no alchemist would easily reveal their formulae to others. To an alchemist, it was something as important as martial arts skills to a warrior. The problem was, even Zhu Hexian himself had not yet successfully completed his research on the improved medicinal pill formula, but Ling Han could analyze the formula just by using his nose. How could Zhu Hexian not be completely shocked by this? "Your improved formula is feasible, but Copper Valley sand is too strong, and the merging point is too high. So no matter how well grounded it is, there will still be remnants within the completed pill, which will affect the quality of the pill. You can try using the teeth of Raging Flames leopard as a replacement," Ling Han suggested. In his previous life, he had casually corrected a few people, and they later went on to become Grandmaster-level alchemists. Zhu Hexian immediately started calculating in his heart, muttering, "Raging Flames leopard's elemental alignment is fire, which just happens to neutralize the yin alignment of the black rock powder, and when reaching a specific high temperature, will melt easily, so there won't be any remnants in the medical pill. Wonderful, truly wonderful. Why didn't I think of that?" The old man was dumbfounded. Looking at Ling Han with a fierce gaze, he immediately said, "Young friend, please accompany me upstairs, and allow me to receive you." Of course, the reception part was false. He wanted to sneakily hoax him into revealing a few more pill formulae. From what he's seen, Ling Han should be an heir to some influential family well-versed in alchemical arts. Ling Han smiled, but said, "I can't." "Why not?" Zhu Hexian became frantic. This boy was very possibly a walking encyclopedia of pill formulae. "Someone told me to get out," Ling Han said in a deliberate tone, glancing at Ma Dejun. "Put on." Ma Dejun fell onto his knees. At this moment, he really wanted to cry but had no tears. How should he have known that Zhu Hexian would treat Ling Han this way? Had he known, he would have even respected Ling Han as an elder. Now what was he supposed to do? He couldn't stop the ugly expression on his face from showing. The other people in the shop were all watching and shaking their heads in their hearts. Had Ma Dejun been slightly more polite in his speech and not so forceful in his attitude, he would still have a way out now. He had brought this onto himself. Zhu Hexian immediately turned his head, his wrinkled face showing a fearsome anger. How could he not be angered? As an alchemist, the one thing he sought in his entire life was to raise his own level in the arts of alchemy and obtain more pill formulae. Now, here was an obvious encyclopedia of pill formulae, and that guy actually asked him to get lost? Did he bore some hatred towards him? Fool! He shouted in anger, "What's going on here? Explain to me." Ma Dejun wanted to die. Under the interrogation of Zhu Hexian, he did not dare not to answer, so he just recounted the incident that happened previously while stammering. Although he did not attempt to distort the facts, the insulting words he spoke to Ling Han were naturally not repeated. He wasn't that much of an idiot. What great authority you have. Zhu Hexian immediately gave him a hearty slap, causing Ma Dejun to spin around on the spot 3 times before finally stopping, completely silly from the beating. You haven't heard of them, so that means they don't exist? Should all the hundreds of thousands of medicinal plants you haven't heard of be removed from this world then? Let me tell you, these 5 medicinal plants indeed do exist. Violet lotus grass can be found in Eaglewood Valley, blue branch fruit can be found in one of the valleys in 100-linked mountains, 100-year vermilion bamboo grows in areas of extreme yang, red-leafed potato is found underneath volcanic ash. Only rotted leaf dried tree roots is rarer, it can only be found underneath the old roots of a tree that has rotted for more than 100 years. I was wrong. I was wrong. Ma Dejun kept apologizing in panic. What else was there to suspect if even Zhu Hexian himself had said so? He stretched out his hand and slapped himself, saying, I shouldn't have been conceited, I shouldn't have behaved like a snob. Zhu Hexian once again turned to Ling Han, and said, Young friend, many apologies, many apologies. He suddenly started, because he recalled that before he left his master, he had heard his master mention a particular formula. That was a medication used for healing injuries inflicted on the spirit base, and it required the 5 types of medicinal plants that Ling Han had wanted to buy. That time, his master had sighed with regret and said that although this formula did not require to be refined into the form of a medicinal pill, the effects were unexpectedly excellent. Unfortunately, possibly due to passage of time, only the names of some of the main ingredients were known, yet the actual method of creation was long lost. As such, it left a very strong impression on him, and now he had suddenly recalled everything. Could it be that Ling Han was buying these medicinal ingredients to concoct the element heart recover spirit powder? The old man couldn't help the increasingly rapid beating of his heart. If he could get this formula and burn it as an offering to his late master, then his esteemed master would feel happy in the afterlife. Young friend, the medicinal ingredients you're buying, could it be that you want to concoct Element Heart Recover Spirit Powder? Ling Han nodded, and truthfully said, my spirit base has been slightly injured. Pooh. Ma Dejun immediately puffed in shock. Damage to the spirit base was fatal to any martial artist. From what he knew, there was no way to completely recover from it. But Ling Han's words seemed to show that coming up with a remedy for it was a piece of cake for him. Lu Yutong's eyes brightened as well. She was Lu clan's princess, and although she herself was not an alchemist, she knew that there were a lot of extremely valuable medicinal pills, like the permanent moon pill, that could heal injuries to the spirit base. The problem was, the value of the permanent moon pill was indescribably high. Even the Lu clan would need to sacrifice colossal wealth to get merely one of them, and they might not be able to buy one even then. Ling Han, Ling Han, how many secrets are you hiding? She was getting more and more curious about Ling Han. Now, even if Ling Han said that he didn't want her as a follower anymore, she reckoned her personal curiosity would make her stay. Chapter 8, Subdued. Young friend, please take a seat. Zhu Hexian politely invited, displaying extreme solicitousness, without showing any arrogance typical of a black-grade alchemist. I can guarantee that within 5 days, no, 3 days, I'll have the medicinal ingredients that you require delivered to you. Good. Ling Han nodded. In his last life, his position was at the absolute summit, but he was weak now, so he might as well befriend a couple more people and extend his social network. Meanwhile, for a small character like Ma Dejun, a small punishment was enough. He would not lower himself to the same level as him. Zhu Hexian was delighted and hurriedly led Ling Han and Lu Yutong to an elegant study on the 3rd floor. If I may ask, who is young friend's master? The old man asked. I have no master, I'm self-taught, Ling Han said. In his last life, he had visited many powerful authorities of alchemical arts and mastered everything. In the end, he formed his own faction, and became the greatest alchemist in history. Zhu Hexian naturally did not believe him. Ling Han was so young, how was it possible for him to have such a deep knowledge of alchemy? However, he was very impressed with Ling Han, and had the intention to make him join Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Thus, he asked him numerous questions to examine Ling Han's skill level. Ling Han calmly answered all his questions. He was a grandmaster alchemist, whether in the past or in the present, who could compare to him in the field of alchemy. As their conversation continued, the leading role gradually fell into his hands. He occasionally caused Zhu Hexian to rack his brains and ponder, and the old man's face became more and more respectful. There was no seniority in academics. Whoever has the ability becomes the teacher. In the beginning, the old man kept addressing him, young friend, placing himself on a higher position, but very quickly, he changed his manner of address, and addressed Ling Han as fellow alchemist. In the end, with his forehead beaded with cold sweat, he couldn't help standing up and respectfully standing at Ling Han's side to listen closely to his teachings, as if he was an apprentice. It was just like when he used to be taught by his esteemed master. In his heart, Ling Han had already reached a very high position. He even had a kind of feeling, if only considering theory and insight, Ling Han had far surpassed his own master. Grandmaster, may I follow by your side, and continue to listen to your teachings? When Zhu Hexian said this, Lu Yutong was almost shocked to death. But after she carefully thought it over, it seemed to be the natural order of events. However, if this was known by the other great clans in the imperial city, she was afraid that everyone would die of envy. This was an actual black-grade alchemist. Although he was only a low-level one, the title of black grade was more than enough, wasn't it? Lu Yutong was astonished, and her resistance to the idea of being Ling Han's follower decreased slightly. Even a grandmaster alchemist like Zhu Hexian was begging to follow Ling Han, so what did she have to complain about? Ling Han shook his head, and said, "At this moment, I have no intention to take on any disciples." In truth, Zhu Hexian's talent in the field of alchemy, in his opinion, could only be considered ordinary. In the past, he had taken on 3 disciples, and all 3 of them were exceptionally talented. Zhu Hexian only felt that it was a pity, and furthermore fully realized that Ling Han refused because his natural talent in alchemy was ordinary. Therefore he was not qualified to become his disciple. He too felt that this was natural. After all, Ling Han's knowledge and skill in the field of alchemy was at too high a level, one which he was only able to admire and look up to from afar. To become the other's disciple was indeed too much to hope for. Lu Yutong was dumbstruck that Ling Han had actually refused. He refused. This person was an actual low-level black-grade alchemist. And as long as Zhu Hexian agreed, even the imperial family of Rain Country would fall over themselves to meet him, and maybe would even gift him with a princess's hand in marriage. However, Ling Han had actually refused him without much consideration. This guy was really incomprehensible. However, if you encounter any trouble with understanding something, you can still come to the Ling clan to look for me whenever you like, Ling Han said. Many thanks, Grandmaster, many thanks, Grandmaster. Zhu Hexian repeatedly raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction, his face revealing the utter joy he was feeling. Lu Yutong felt speechless in her mind. If this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out of their sockets. A person with the noble status of a black-grade alchemist was actually performing the salutations of a disciple in front of Ling Han, feeling honored merely because of being able to visit him. "And, then I'll take my leave," Ling Han said. "Let me see you off, Grandmaster." Zhu Hexian quickly said. "Oh, right. Yutong, did you bring any money with you? Help me pay for medicine in advance." Ling Han turned towards Lu Yutong and said. Lu Yutong, of course, now knew that this medication was intended for Ling Han himself and not for her illness, so she couldn't stop her lips from twitching, thinking that this guy really knew how to make the best use of everything. He had just taken her in as a follower and now he was aiming for her purse. No need, no need. Zhu Hexian hurriedly waved his hands. The alchemical knowledge he heard from Ling Han today was invaluable, How could he bear to take Ling Han's payment for the medicinal ingredients? Great master, please do allow me to express some of my gratitude by waiving the payment. Ling Han pondered for a moment, then said, then do as you like. Though he had only casually taught Zhu Hexian a bit, he was the actual alchemy emperor. This little bit of teaching would be enough for Zhu Hexian to benefit from for the rest of his life. Zhu Hexian immediately looked delighted. To be able to do something for Ling Han, even if it was only such a small favor, made him extremely elated. He even felt honored. Then I'll buy some return origin pills, Ling Han said after thinking for a while. Return origin pill, this kind of cheap thing, how can I let Grandmaster buy it? Anyway, it's something I can casually create, so naturally, it'll be a gift to Grandmaster, Zhu Hexian quickly said. Lu Yutong was once again rendered speechless. Return origin pill could allow a martial artist to quickly recover his origin power. It was an indispensable support during combat, and it was not something simple that could be casually created. Although Ling Han only required the lowest level lower grade return origin pills, even one of them would be worth 3 silver coins at least. Zhu Hexian was very generous, immediately giving Ling Han 100 return origin pills. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han was still only in the body refining tier and could only take low-level return origin pills, he would definitely have presented him with high-level return origin pills instead. Ling Han and Lu Yutong descended down the stairs and left, seen off by Zhu Hexian. Where are we going now? Lu Yutong could not help asking after the two had walked for a while. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, naturally home, to wait for the medicine to be delivered. Without healing the spirit base first, he had no way to start cultivating. Lu Yutong curiously asked, you really know how to concoct pills? There should be no one on this world who knows that better than me, Ling Han bluntly said. You're bragging. Lu Yutong harumphed. Although Ling Han had completely subdued Zhu Hexian was only a black-grade alchemist. There were still alchemists of earth grade and heaven grade above him. Ling Han did not argue with her. His status had long been engraved in history. Why didn't you agree to let Grandmaster Zhu follow by your side? He's not only an alchemist, but also a warrior of gushing spring tier, Lu Yutong asked. Ling Han paused in his step, turned over to look at her, and continued walking forwards, saying, first, your spirit base is of heaven grade, and you've now reached the 8th level of element gathering tier, so you're one step away from breaking through to gushing spring tier. Second, I don't need anyone to concoct pills for me. Third, if I really need to have someone by my side, then a beautiful girl is far easier on the eyes than an old man. Lu Yutong could not help but be speechless. However, his words did cause her to be a little pleased deep within her heart. We'll go home first. I still have to teach you 3 mysterious arts, Ling Han said. Lu Yutong could not help feeling a bit excited and her steps quickened. The illness that caused her to fall asleep without reason has troubled her for far too many years. The two returned to the Ling clan residence. On the whole way, all servants they saw were wearing peculiar expressions. They had heard of what had happened that morning, that the chief butler had actually been trashed by young Master Trash. It wasn't too surprising for them to know about it, for this kind of news would naturally spread throughout the whole clan quite quickly. Ling Han pretended to see nothing and brought Lu Yutong to his room to start teaching her 3 mysterious arts. Aren't you afraid I'll go back on my word? Lu Yutong suddenly asked, and Ling Han was about to recite the arts. Will you? Ling Han asked in return. Chapter 9, Guiding Cultivation. If it was half a day ago, Lu Yutong really would consider casting Ling Han aside. Get the cultivation technique through deception first, and then compensate Ling Han with some material objects is what she thought. Who asked Ling Han to ignore her noble status as the princess of a noble family and insist on having her as his follower? Yet now, she was hesitant. The reserved nature of a girl caused her to really want to leave Ling Han's side, but once she recalled the endless miracles Ling Han had displayed, she wanted to stay at his side, curious to see where his limits were. Maybe yes, maybe not. Who can say for sure? She gave him an ambiguous answer. Ling Han laughed heartily. If Lu Yutong had solemnly vowed to be steadfastly loyal to him, he would not have believed her. However, he was a grand warrior of the Heaven Tier and the Alchemy Emperor. How could he be unable to subdue this little slip of a girl? Take off your clothes, he casually said. Lu Yutong suddenly looked furious. Could Ling Han want to force her to sacrifice her body in exchange for teaching her the cultivation technique? Although she didn't want to die, and really did very much want her illness cured, if she had to use her body in exchange, then she would rather die. Don't misunderstand. Ling Han said with a smile, I only want to guide you in the circulation path of the origin power. This particular cultivation technique requires the origin power in your body to circulate through many odd paths and can't be explained simply through words. You should know yourself that the slightest difference leads to a huge loss, so if there is the tiniest discrepancy in the circulation of the cultivation technique, that's why we must make sure that there is no any discrepancy or error at all. Lu Yutong paused. Ling Han's words were not false. There were uncountable veins and arteries within human body. If there was the tiniest bit of error in the circulation path of origin power, then the results would be vastly different. The problem was that she was an unmarried young lady. How could she take off all her clothes and allow a man's finger to roam over her whole body? She considered for a long while, then suggested a compromise. She would keep her undergarments on, and Ling Han would use a chopstick instead of a finger in guiding the circulation of her origin power. Get out first. Lu Yutong said, pointing outside. Hey, this is my room. Ling Han laughed, but he still stood up and walked outside. He still had this little bit of gentlemanly character. He waited for a long while before he finally heard Lu Yutong say, You can come in now. Ling Han entered the room to see Lu Yutong seated on the bed, her beautiful figure concealed by a bedsheet, her beautiful hair falling over her shoulders like a waterfall. She was very enchanting. She really is a captivating and extraordinarily beautiful girl, Ling Han thought. Even considering the demanding eyesight he had in his last life, he couldn't help but admit that the charm of this icy beauty caused his heart to slightly stir. Snow-white teeth biting red lips, beautiful eyes roaming around, looking both resentful and pitiful, Lu Yutong slowly slipped out of the bedsheet, and her beautiful, jade-like figure appeared. There was only a tube top on her upper body, and her fair, smooth skin was like the highest grade of jade, exuding an entrancing luster. She wore underpants on her lower body, but she had torn the trouser legs from her upper thigh downwards, revealing two long, straight legs. They were neither too plump nor too thin, rather, they could be considered perfect, causing one's heartbeat to speed up. Seeing Ling Han's roaming eyes, she couldn't help feeling embarrassed. Her beautiful, jade-like face blushed, adding on to her allure. Goodness, she was supposed to be an icy beauty, but now that she was blushing, she suddenly became a universal temptation, looking so enchanting that even Ling Han's heaven-tier temperament from his last life was slightly disturbed, causing him to want to devour this captivating little demon. But he quickly came back to his senses and said, Sit in a cross-legged position, I'll be teaching you the first level of mental cultivation method from 3E Mysterious Arts. He recited it word by word. At first Lu Yutong couldn't enter into the right state of mind. After all, she was almost naked in the same room with a man, but her martial artist's heart very quickly defeated her embarrassment as she listened carefully to Ling Han's verbal chants, committing them to her memory. Ling Han spoke very quickly, but Lu Yutong showed shocking talent. It was almost like whatever she heard, she would never forget. Ling Han only recited everything twice, and Lu Yutong already managed to remember almost 1,000 words worth of verbal chants. This was only the first step. The next step, and also the key factor, was the circulation path of the origin power. Ling Han, using a chopstick in place of his finger, lightly drew all over Lu Yutong's beautiful figure, guiding her and circulating her origin power. Once, twice, only 3 times were enough for Lu Yutong to already circulate her origin power according to the new cultivation technique. She truly deserved the title genius. Ling Han hurriedly departed from the room. This little demon was really too enchanting. He seemed to have overestimated his own willpower. If things continued in the same way, he very possibly would end up taking advantage of and pushing down this entrancing beauty. Since Lu Yutong had already started cultivation, she would definitely not regain consciousness in the short term. Thus Ling Han decided to just sit outside and similarly begin cultivating. However, he was not cultivating 5 elements heaven-grade skill. Instead, he began cultivating indestructible heaven scroll. Because his spirit base was not healed yet, he did not dare to take any risks. If his spirit base was injured further, then it would not be healed even by element heart recover spirit powder. The circulation of indestructible heaven scroll was like a bottomless pit, very quickly expending the little origin power he had within his body to refine his muscles, veins and bones and make them stronger. If it was cultivated to the limit, then the body would neither deteriorate nor age. Even if a meteor crashed into him, the meteor would shatter while he would be completely unharmed. Of course, he was much too far from reaching that state. After merely 5 minutes, the origin power stored within his body was completely exhausted, so he swallowed a return origin pill to quickly recover the origin power within his body and then continue cultivation. Each medicine has poisonous properties. In the beginning, the return origin pill could exhibit the best effects, but as the amount he took increased, the immunity of his body to the pill's effects also largely increased, causing the pill's effects to worsen until, finally, he could only recover less than 1/10 of his origin power after taking a pill. Ling Han stopped. The day had ended, to continue cultivation would be of no effect. However, his improvement was very obvious. His muscles, veins and bones have all become slightly stronger. According to his estimate, this kind of strength would compare to the 3rd level of body refining tier. No wonder it was called Heaven Scroll. It was awesome. In his last life, Ling Han had also cultivated a few recovery-type skills, like Golden Body Secrets and Boulder Technique, which allowed the body to become stronger. However, their effects could not compare to Indestructible Heaven Scroll's effectiveness. The difference between them was like that between heaven and earth. That was normal. If Indestructible Heaven Scroll was not that good, how could it be possible that a warrior of the heaven tier would need to spend over 10,000 years to comprehend it? Not to mention, even then it was only the first layer he comprehended. However, cultivating this Indestructible Heaven Scroll really expends a lot of origin power, and would still need a large amount of valuable medicines to support refining the body. This would definitely delay my cultivation. However, this Indestructible Heaven Scroll has too great a power, the delay would be worth it. My spirit base is immortal grade, anyway. I shouldn't think about the highest tier of neither deteriorating nor aging body yet. The first level of Indestructible Heaven Scroll is also further divided into 4 tiers, which are respectively the Dead Tree tier, the Rock Cliff tier, the Iron Sheet tier and the Diamond tier. Once I reach the Dead Tree tier, my body would be like a dead tree. Attacks on me would be as if hurting a dead tree without damaging its life. I can even have my body be like a dead tree, without any life signs. No one would be able to tell that I would still be alive. Once I reach the Diamond tier, then no matter how heavy the injury, it could be recovered in an instant, even a torn-off limb would be able to recover. It's practically a godly skill. Ling Han turned around and looked at the door to the inner chamber. The curtain moved, and a goddess-like figure walked out, her lightly blushing face incomparably graceful, beautiful and entrancing. You've completed cultivating the first level of 3 mysterious arts? Ling Han said with a little surprise. Lu Yutong nodded, slightly afraid to meet Ling Han's eyes. An odd feeling was stirring to life within her heart, one that she had never felt before. This girl really is a genius. Ling Han thought in his heart. Chapter 10, Healing the Spirit Base. 3 Mysterious Arts has a total of 9 layers, corresponding with the 9 tiers of martial arts. The 9th layer would be the Heaven tier, which was the highest tier that Ling Han had reached in his previous life. Out of the many cultivation techniques circulated all over the world, none have broken through to the 10th tier, which was the Shattering Void tier. That was why Ling Han traveled all over the world to visit all kinds of ancient historical sites. The first layer of the cultivation technique known as 3E Mysterious Arts corresponded to the body refining tier, a stage Lu Yutong had long passed through. It was naturally easy for her to cultivate it again. It was just like a high school student doing the homework of a junior high student. But the problem was, she had actually completed cultivation of the first layer within such a short time. Wasn't her talent way too strong? But thinking once more, Lu Yutong had the 3E Vanishing Veins, and 3E Mysterious Arts was originally formulated for someone who possessed such veins, so her impressive cultivation speed was something normal. Ling Han nodded, saying, "Then I'll continue to teach you the second layer. As long as you are able to cultivate the majority of the third layer, you will have completely suppressed the 3E Vanishing Veins, and will no longer be affected by them." The third layer, in other words, she would reach strength equal to the Gushing Spring tier. However, Lu Yutong was already at the 8th layer of Element Gathering tier. Moreover, she could already sense the juncture to break through to the 9th layer, so she was only one step away from breaking through to the Gushing Spring tier. Lu Yutong couldn't stop the blush on her beautiful face from increasing even more. To begin teaching her the second layer now, wouldn't that mean that she would have to take off her clothes again? Don't let your imagination run wild, Ling Han said in reprimand. Lu Yutong could not help fiercely glaring at him. Her imagination was not running wild, rather, she was afraid that Ling Han's imagination was running wild instead. The two once again returned to the inner chamber and, just like the previous time, Lu Yutong removed her robe, allowing her alluring, beautiful figure to appear practically naked in front of Ling Han. As the saying went, the first time is awkward, the second is easy. Although she was still very embarrassed, it was much better than the first time. When Ling Han taught her the second layer, it was almost night. So, he had servants deliver 2 servings of dinner, of which he himself ate a large portion, leaving a smaller one for Lu Yutong. Women, you see, have small appetites, so a small portion was enough. After about 3 hours had passed, Lu Yutong once again exited and said in extreme surprise, "My cultivation speed now is actually 10 times faster than it used to be." This meant that once she broke through to the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier, she'd need less than 2 months to be able to reach the top before tackling the Gushing Spring tier. Too fast. Ling Han could not help smiling, and said, 3E Mysterious Arts is a heaven-grade cultivation technique. Heaven-grade cultivation technique. Lu Yutong almost fainted. What did heaven-grade cultivation technique mean? Let's just put it this way. The reason why the Lu clan had become one of the 8 great clans in the imperial city was because they had a scroll named Red Cloud Secrets, which was a black-grade medium-level cultivation technique. At the same time, the imperial Qi clan was able to secure its position as the lord of the land because they had a scroll named 7 Massacre Skills, which was a black-grade high-level cultivation technique. In other words, a black-grade high-level cultivation technique would allow the creation of an empire, and a black-grade medium-level cultivation technique would allow a power to become one of the great clans of Rain Country and thrive for 1,000 years. Now then, what significance did a heaven-grade cultivation technique have? It was indescribably valuable. If Ling Han had said from the start that he would teach her a heaven-grade cultivation technique, she would definitely have treated him as if he was crazy. You couldn't blame her after all. If a puny, little clan from Grey Cloud Town could have a heaven-grade cultivation technique, then wouldn't this world be completely messed up? But now, she couldn't not believe him, for she had personally experienced it. This is an actual heaven-grade cultivation technique, and you're just going to teach it to me like this? Her heart trembled. There was an unexplainable throbbing within her heart. Ling Han smiled. This 3E Mysterious Arts indeed was a heaven-grade cultivation technique, but could only be cultivated by the possessor of the 3E Vanishing Veins. It was useless in anyone else's hands, so of course he did not fear that Lu Yutong would divulge it. Moreover, he had obtained indestructible heaven scroll, a truly supreme godly cultivation technique. Just comprehending its first layer required 10,000 years. Compared with this, no matter what kind of heaven-grade cultivation technique it was, it was completely worthless. Naturally, he would not tell her that. Instead, he said, "You are my follower, I'm never a miser to my own people." This was not Alyeha had always swept any mess made by those close to him under the rug, and was very generous towards his own people. Lu Yutong could not stop an expression of embarrassment from appearing on her beautiful face. According to her understanding, the words, own people, had a completely different meaning. After a while, she finally said, "Don't worry, without your permission, I will not teach this cultivation technique to anyone else." "Whatever," Ling Han said. There would only be one possessor of the 3 vanishing veins every few thousand years anyway, so even if she taught it to someone else, it would be lost through the long passage of Tomito anyone else. This was a cultivation technique that couldn't even compare to yellow-grade low-level cultivation technique since no one else could cultivate in it. Who would actually want to preserve it for thousands of years? Lu Yutong could not help feeling a little disappointed. Previously her heart was trembling in excitement, and if Ling Han had just used a few sweet words to pamper her a bit, her good feelings towards Ling Han would definitely increase. However, Ling Han simply did not bear such thoughts, and so he missed an excellent opportunity. She walked towards the table, and began to eat. While slowly eating, she said, "From tomorrow onwards, I will have to enter seclusion to tackle the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so I won't be able to follow you around in this period." "Haha, don't worry, don't worry. I have no plans to go anywhere these 2 days. I will simply wait for Zhu He Xian to deliver the medicinal ingredients. I plan to heal my spirit base first before doing anything else," Ling Han said. He treasured this second life very much. Now that his spirit base was injured, he definitely did not want to take unnecessary risks and ruin his own foundation in martial arts. Lu Yutong did not waste time. Once she finished eating, she entered seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han could only yield the inner chamber to her and move his bed to the outer chamber. Ling Zhongquan and his group felt immeasurable hatred towards Ling Han, but thanks to Lu Yutong's presence, they absolutely did not dare have any crazy ideas. Ling Han seldom came out, and only waited quietly for Zhu He Xian to deliver the medicine and for Lu Yutong to come out of seclusion, thus making it even more difficult for them to act. As expected, Zhu He Xian did not go back on his word and, on the 4th day, personally came to deliver the medicinal ingredients requested by Ling Han. Naturally, the old man also took the chance to consult with Ling Han. In truth, he had wanted to come over these few days, but in his eyes, Ling Han was at the level of a supreme grandmaster, so he didn't dare to come and disturb him for no reason. However, Ling Han did not have much patience today and very quickly saw Zhu He Xian off. He wanted to immediately start concocting, heal his spirit base and once again return to the path of cultivation. To Ling Han, concocting medicine was naturally a piece of cake. You couldn't blame her, after all, if a puny, little clan from Grey Cloud Town could have a heaven-grade cultivation technique, then wouldn't this world be completely messed up? But now, she couldn't not believe him, for she had personally experienced it. "This is an actual heaven-grade cultivation technique, and you're just going to teach it to me like this?" Her heart trembled, there was an unexplainable throbbing within her heart. Ling Han smiled. This 3 mysterious arts indeed was a heaven-grade cultivation technique, but could only be cultivated by the possessor of the 3 vanishing veins. It was useless in anyone else's hands, so of course he did not fear that Lu Yutong would divulge it. Moreover, he had obtained indestructible heaven scroll, a truly supreme godly cultivation technique. Just comprehending its first layer required 10,000 years. Compared with this, no matter what kind of heaven-grade cultivation technique it was, it was completely worthless. Naturally, he would not tell her that. Instead, he said, "You are my follower, I'm never a miser to my own people." This was not a lie, he had always swept any mess made by those close to him under the rug, and was very generous towards his own people. Lu Yutong could not stop an expression of embarrassment from appearing on her beautiful face. According to her understanding, the words, own people, had a completely different meaning. After a while, she finally said, don't worry, without your permission, I will not teach this cultivation technique to anyone else. Whatever, Ling Han said. There would only be one possessor of the 3 vanishing veins every few thousand years anyway, so even if she taught it to someone else, it would be lost through the long passage of time. To anyone else, this was a cultivation technique that couldn't even compare to yellow-grade low-level cultivation technique since no one else could cultivate in it. Who would actually want to preserve it for thousands of years? Lu Yutong could not help feeling a little disappointed. Previously her heart was trembling in excitement, and if Ling Han had just used a few sweet words to pamper her a bit, her good feelings towards Ling Han would definitely increase. However, Ling Han simply did not bear such thoughts, and so he missed an excellent opportunity. She walked towards the table, and began to eat. While slowly eating, she said, from tomorrow onwards, I will have to enter seclusion to tackle the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so I won't be able to follow you around in this period. Haha, don't worry, don't worry. I have no plans to go anywhere these 2 days, I will simply wait for Zhu He Xian to deliver the medicinal ingredients. I plan to heal my spirit base first before doing anything else, Ling Han said. He treasured this second life very much. Now that his spirit base was injured, he definitely did not want to take unnecessary risks and ruin his own foundation in martial arts. Lu Yutong did not waste time. Once she finished eating, she entered seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han could only yield the inner chamber to her and move his bed to the outer chamber. Ling Zhongquan and his group felt immeasurable hatred towards Ling Han, but thanks to Lu Yutong's presence, they absolutely did not dare have any crazy ideas. Ling Han seldom came out, and only waited quietly for Zhu He Xian to deliver the medicine and for Lu Yutong to come out of seclusion, thus making it even more difficult for them to act. As expected, Zhu He Xian did not go back on his word and, on the 4th day, personally came to deliver the medicinal ingredients requested by Ling Han. Naturally, the old man also took the chance to consult with Ling Han. In truth, he had wanted to come over these few days, but in his eyes, Ling Han was at the level of a supreme grandmaster, so he didn't dare to come and disturb him for no reason. However, Ling Han did not have much patience today and very quickly saw Zhu He Xian off. He wanted to immediately start concocting, heal his spirit base and once again return to the path of cultivation. To Ling Han, concocting medicine was naturally a piece of cake. Chapter 11, 4th Layer of Body Refining Tier. He could finally start cultivating. Ling Han had been waiting for it for 3 long days. Add to that the long wait he had experienced for the past 10,000 years, and it was no wonder that he would immediately sit in a cross-legged position to cultivate now that he realized he could finally start cultivating. However, just as he was about to circulate 5 elements heaven-grade skill, he paused for a while, stood up and opened the door to his room, entering the courtyard outside. Lu Yutong was still in seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier inside the inner chamber. If he started cultivating too close to her, he would disturb the spiritual environment within this small area and affect her cultivation. See? What a considerate master he was. Ling Han sat cross-legged in the courtyard. This courtyard belonged to his father, Ling Dongxing. As the clan head of the Ling clan, the courtyard was naturally very big, but Ling Han had long since dismissed the servants, and would only allow someone to deliver the 3 meals of the day here. Come, come, let me see the greatness of an immortal-grade spirit base. With a mental command from Ling Han, his spirit base immediately bloomed like a flower. A lotus of the Tao, the 5 elements in balance, this was the most perfect form of a spirit base. Wang. The spiritual qi immediately rushed over from all directions, rich beyond compare. The 5 elements of the world: gold, wood, water, fire and earth, and thus 5 different types of spiritual qi rushed frantically into his body, the latter like a thirsty horse drinking from a spring. Ordinarily, a person had no way to absorb more than one type of spiritual qi because it was impossible to simultaneously refine more than one type of it. That's why cultivators usually focused only on one in their cultivation. For example, someone could have a spirit base with a dual alignment of fire and earth, the fire spirit base being slightly stronger. It meant that the absorption rate of fire-type spiritual chi would be higher, so he would only need to focus on refining fire-type spiritual chi, and would not be able to obtain both it and earth-type spiritual chi. However, the wonderful characteristic of the 5 elements mix chaos lotus was that it could take advantage of the mutual reinforcement and restraint of the 5 elements, and make the 5 different types of spiritual chi create a perfect balance. However, absorbing spiritual chi was one matter, refining it was another. Only 5 elements heaven-grade skill could achieve both. This cultivation technique was not something just anyone could control. It required high-level multitasking and did not allow any errors or mistakes, otherwise, the origin power could enter the wrong pathways. A light consequence of this would be spitting out some fresh blood, the most serious consequence would be instant death. Immortal grade spirit base, heaven grade skill, an extremely strong control. Only with these 3 factors combined would one possessing the 5 elements mix chaos lotus spirit base be able to cultivate 5 elements heaven grade skill. Being able to satisfy such high requirements. Ling Han's cultivation speed could be imagined. Endless spiritual chi rushed inwards and Ling Han's body continuously generated origin power, refining his blood, flesh, veins and bones. A martial artist of the body refining tier had not yet opened up his dantian, and so could only store his origin power within his blood, flesh, veins and bones. Only once he stepped into the element gathering tier could he open up his dantian and form a small world within his body to accommodate his origin power there. In his previous life, he was a strong warrior of the heaven tier, so naturally he would not make any wrong turns on the path of cultivation. As he now possessed the greatest spirit base in the world and cultivated the best first-rate technique in existence, the speed of his progress was naturally as if he had grown wings and taken flight. The middle period of the second layer of body refining tier, late period, peak, with only a slight tremble of his body, the hurdle for the third layer of body refining tier was immediately overcome. So fast. Ling Han nodded secretly. In his last life, he had a high-level heaven-grade spirit base, but he had still spent 12 days to get from the second layer of body refining tier to the third layer of body refining tier. However, it was not because a high-level heaven-grade spirit base was really poor in comparison to an immortal-grade spirit base, but rather because Ling Han had been cultivating a high-level yellow-grade cultivation technique at that time. The present him was as if standing on the shoulder of a giant. There was no way that his last life could compare to the starting point he was at now. He had no intention of stopping there. He intently and continuously refined the spiritual chi from the environment, turning it into his own body's origin power. The early period of the third layer of body refining tier, middle period, late period, peak, within only a few hours' time, he had reached the limit of the third layer and thus of the early stage of the body refining tier. However, after spending such a long time cultivating, his mental energy was largely depleted. The requirements for controlling 5 elements heaven-grade skill were quite high after all. If he continued cultivating, he could misrefine his origin power at any moment, bringing only harm and no benefit. Still, he had already reached this level, so no matter what, he wanted to break through to the 4th layer of body refining tier today. The 3rd layer was still the early stage of body refining tier, while the 4th layer was the middle stage. This was a large leap and not just a simple breakthrough from one layer to another. For an ordinary person to think of breaking through twice in a short period of time, that was without doubt a complete fantasy. No matter what, to break through would require at least 2 or 3 days of accumulating origin power. However, Ling Han was a warrior of the heaven tier in his last life, so to him, there were no bottlenecks before heaven tier. Break through. He snorted lightly, and there was a subtle change within his body. With a slight tremble of his body, he had once again broken through. 4th layer of body refining tier, now this can finally be shown to others, he showed a slight smile. Although this layer of cultivation could not be considered really high amongst those of the same age, to consecutively break through 2 minor layers within a single night was still something that gave him great satisfaction. Moreover, the cultivation technique he was using was a heaven-grade skill. His origin power was incomparably pure, its quality far higher than that of any other person's. The power of the fourth layer of body refining tier he wielded was enough to compare with the power of someone from the peak period fifth layer of body refining tier, or even the sixth layer. Sleep. He got onto the bed. Due to the large expense of his mental energy, he very quickly fell asleep. However, it was a light sleep as his consciousness was still 70% alert, so that he could immediately awaken at the smallest disturbance. The night passed quickly, and he was shaken awake by a great fluctuation of origin power. He immediately sat upright, revealing a very alert expression, but then immediately realized that it was not an enemy attack, but rather Lu Yutong who had broken through. To break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier from the 8th layer of element gathering tier in 3 days, her talent was really quite good. For every tier, the further one got, the harder it was to break through. It was as if one was rowing a boat against the tide. With a soft sound, the hanging curtain of the doorway opened, and he could see Lu Yutong walk out, a strong energy fluctuation present around her body. She had just broken through, and was still unable to control the energy swelling around her body properly. "I broke through," she said to Ling Han, and there was delight and pride on her beautiful face. 3 days to completely breach the gap between 2 layers, moreover the most difficult one between 8th and 9th layer, this was indeed something to take pride in. She looked towards Ling Han, hoping to hear a compliment from the other's mouth. However, her joy and pride very quickly completely vanished. The expression on her face was as if she had just seen a ghost. Pointing towards Ling Han, she said, You're already in the 4th layer of body refining tier." She remembered very clearly that, before her seclusion, Ling Han was only at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. Moreover, Zhu Hiexian's medicine had only been delivered yesterday morning. Carefully calculating, from the moment his spirit base recovered to the moment he broke through to the 4th layer of body refining tier, Ling Han had only spent 1 day and 1 night. 1 day and 1 night to break through 2 minor layers. Under comparison, what would her spending 3 days just to break through 1 layer count as? Everyone said that the young master of the Ling clan was a standard piece of trash, but if someone with this kind of progress rate was still considered a piece of trash, then what would she count as? A piece of trash amongst all other trash. You're now in the 4th layer of body refining tier. Even her voice had a slight tremble in it. If someone had told her a day ago that she would be shocked because of someone breaking through to 4th layer of body refining tier, she would have replied with nothing but a snort of contempt. However, if they added that someone spent 1 day to break through from the 2nd layer of body refining tier to the 4th layer of body refining tier, she would definitely find that the biggest joke in the world. She had once thought that there would be no more miracles from Ling Han, yet she never imagined that she would once again experience such an earth-shattering shock. Ling Han nodded, and with a calm tone, he said, "That's right, what of it? How can you dismiss it so lightly?" Lu Yutong immediately felt as if she was about to go mad. Chapter 12, Father's Return. Pang, 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 pang. It was at that very moment that an urgent knocking was heard from the door. Ling Han walked over and opened the door only to see a boy servant. He had already commanded that, if there was no urgent business, he was not to be disturbed. Thus, he asked, "What happened?" "The clan head has returned," the boy's servant hurriedly said. Excitement instantly rose within Ling Han's body, pressing him to meet with that man. This was an instinctive reaction of the body. "Father," he murmured. He had inherited this body, and had also inherited the blood and responsibility that belonged to this body. He turned and smiled at Lu Yutong, saying, "Yutong, come with me to meet my father." A red blush immediately flew upon Lu Yutong's beautiful face. She felt as if she was a daughter-in-law going to meet with her parents-in-law. "Pay." She hurriedly spat in her heart a few times. Why would she have this kind of feeling? There was nothing going on between herself and this guy. "Where is father?" Ling Han asked the boy servant. In the main hall. Ling Han headed towards the main hall, and the pace of his steps increased from walking to running. There was a powerful longing in his heart. The moment he barged into the living hall, he saw a man of about 40 years old, standing there proudly. He had a tall, broad figure, a handsome face, and exuded a powerful aura. At that moment, Ling Han could not longer differentiate whether it was the instinctive reaction of the body, or the fact that he was an orphan in his last life and so thirsted for familial love. His eyes could not help growing wet, and the blood relation running through his veins caused him to easily call out, "Father." "Honor." Ling Dongxing laughed heartily and quickly walked over to embrace Ling Han. However, he immediately put on a shocked expression and said, "Why are you still in the clan residence? Aren't you supposed to have gone to Huyang Academy?" This was fatherly love, this was fatherly love. Ling Han greedily enjoyed the embrace of his father. Although in his last life, someone with Ling Dongxing's cultivation level was not even qualified to enter his eyes, now he was shaken to the point that his eyes were brimming with tears. He had finally cast aside the identity of his last life to enjoy his new life. He was no longer a loner without any family. He had a father, a good father who would risk his own life for him. He rubbed at the corners of his eyes, shook his head and said, "I don't want to go to Huyang Academy." "Why?" Ling Dongxing asked. He knew that the quality of his only son's spirit base was too poor. Even though he had expended various efforts, his cultivation still did not make any progress. This was something that could not be helped. And he too had worked very hard to send Ling Han to Huyang Academy, which was to make use of the various immeasurable resources on hand at Huyang Academy to forcibly raise Ling Han's cultivation level to element gathering tier. Only with that could he die without regrets. But Ling Han actually said he did not want to go to Huyang Academy. This caused his anger to rise. There was no helping being born with poor talent, but if there was not even a tiny bit of desire to improve oneself, then there really was no cure. Ling Han naturally couldn't say that he had been a warrior of the heaven tier in his last life and there were countless high-level cultivation techniques and martial skills stored within his head, or that he had obtained the indestructible heaven scroll that required him to spend 10,000 years just to comprehend the first layer. Even if he went to Huyang Academy, what was he supposed to learn? If he had really said so, Ling Dongxing might think that he had been possessed. "Yutong, come, this is my father," he said as he glanced at Lu Yutong, hurriedly beckoning her to come over with a wave of his hands, changing the subject. "Yutong hereby greets Ling Clan's clan head." Lu Yutong performed the greeting etiquette of a junior. Ling Dongxing was startled. He did not know who Lu Yutong was, yet he could tell that she was a martial artist of the element gathering tier just like him, and that her cultivation didn't differ much from his own. Both of them were at the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Most martial artists would be able to tell the cultivation level of those weaker than themselves. Ling Han was an exception after all. He had brought along the amazing knowledge of a warrior of the heaven tier from his past life. With this being the case, she could completely stand at the same level as he, and there was no need for her to perform the greeting of a junior. Wait, could it be? He suddenly looked both joyful and surprised. Could it be because of Ling Han? This young girl liked his son. With this thought, he could not restrain his delight. This girl seemed to be only about 17 or 18 years old. Yet shockingly, she was already at the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Her talent definitely had to be extremely high. With such an excellent companion, so what if Ling Han's own cultivation level was poorer? No wonder this brat didn't want to go to Huyang Academy. It must be that he did not want to be separated from her. Hey, this brat was actually an affectionate character. "You little brat." Ling Dongxing first glared at Ling Han, then said to Lu Yutong, "Miss, where are you from?" "The Lu clan of the Imperial City," Lu Yutong replied. Ling Dongxing was shocked. The Lu clan of the Imperial City? Although there were many in the world with the surname Lu, there was only one Lu clan in the Imperial City, one of the 8 great clans, with power which was only below that of the imperial family in the whole of Rain Country. Such a great background. Wait, you should be the one sent from Huyang Academy to fetch honor to the academy, right? he suddenly saw a flash of light. Otherwise, how could it be possible someone of the Lu clan from the imperial city would appear here? Yes, Ling clan head, Lu Yutong said softly. Ling Dongxing could not help looking over at Ling Han, and in his heart thought that although his son was not capable and without talent in martial arts, his ability to pick up girls really took one's breath away. The other was here only to fetch him, so how did he manage to capture the other's heart? Moreover, he only needed several days. Ling Han had inherited the graceful, charming demeanor of his younger days. Yes, it had to be it. But since Lu Yutong was someone from Huyang Academy, why wouldn't Ling Han follow her then? The two of them would both be at the Yang Academy, so there wouldn't be any worry about being in two separate places. Father, I would like to be by your side for a while longer. I can go to the academy anytime later anyway, Ling Han said. He did not want to scare his father, and thus planned to proceed slowly, and let Ling Dongxing accept the change in him bit by bit. Ling Dongxing gave a hearty laugh, and said, "Good, good, good." After all, the one who would be fetching him was still here, so Ling Han could go to Huyang Academy at any time he wanted. He patted Ling Han's shoulder and was just about to say something more on the topic, but made a shocked expression as he noticed, "Honor, you've broken through." Finally there is someone to share the shock I have experienced, Lu Yutong thought. I broke through, Ling Han nodded. I have only departed for 10 days, and you did not just break through, you actually broke through 2 layers. Ling Dongxing's surprise did not decrease any bit. This kind of progression rate was completely inconceivable. If Ling Han had only broken through 1 layer, then it could be explained that Ling Han had been well prepared, and had been at the same layer for too long a period of time and thus induced a one-time explosion using the accumulated origin power. But, 2 whole layers, this would practically shock others to death. Was his son really a piece of trash? If this was still considered a piece of trash, then was there still any genius in this world? Seeing the twitching corners of Ling Dongxing's mouth, Lu Yutong instantly felt comforted in her heart. She didn't want to be the only one to always suffer this kind of great shock. It's acceptable, Ling Han nodded. Ling Dongxing and Lu Yutong both rolled their eyes. Only acceptable? However, Ling Dongxing instantly laughed heartily, saying, "Ha ha ha, let's see who would dare to say my son is a piece of trash in the future. Which father would not want his son to be successful in life?" So far, Ling Han could only be a piece of trash due to the limitations of his spirit base, yet now Ling Dongxing felt as if he had seen a spark of hope. "Father, I obtained a fateful encounter," Ling Han said. Ling Dongxing nodded. If there had been no fateful encounter, how would Ling Han be able to make such quick progress? However, this fateful encounter was indeed extraordinarily large. Chapter 13, Ling Dongxing's Regret. "Father, I will definitely not disappoint you. I will only make you proud of me," Ling Han said. Good. 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 You truly are my, Ling Dongxing's, son." Ling Dongxing too was excited to the point of shedding tears. Although he did not know what kind of fateful encounter Ling Han had obtained, the present him could only feel joyful, excited and delighted. He wanted nothing more than to announce to the whole world that his son, Ling Dongxing's son, was not a piece of trash. Lu Yutong looked at this scene and, for some reason, the corners of her eyes felt slightly wet. "Father, I would like to discuss something with you." Ling Han pulled Ling Dongxing to a corner of their courtyard, and let Lu Yutong go to rest first. There were some words that could only be said to his father and, after all, Lu Yutong had not yet obtained his true approval and trust. "What kind of matter is it for you to be so mysterious about it?" Ling Dongxing asked with a smile and a bit of curiosity. He was curious what the words that could not even be heard by Lu Yutong could be. He naturally thought that Ling Han and Lu Yutong were already a couple. Ling Han said, "Father, let me look at your spirit base." One could actually view the spirit base using a special means, but for those in the element gathering tier, they could directly project an image of their spirit base without having to resort to any supporting method. Ling Dongxing could not help frowning, before saying, "Why? I would like to find a cultivation technique that best suits you, taking into consideration your spirit base," Ling Han said. Ling Dongxing could not help being secretly speechless. How many cultivation techniques had this son of his gotten his hands on to actually be able to choose a cultivation technique best suited to the individual according to their type of spirit base? If he had not just witnessed Ling Han's miracle, he would not believe his words one bit. He shook his head, yet did not say a single word. "Father?" When Ling Han looked at Ling Dongxing, he realized there seemed to be some kind of hidden story. Ling Dongxing exhaled a sigh and said, "No matter what the cultivation technique is, it's useless. My spirit base is already destroyed." "What?" Ling Han called softly, but very soon, an enraged expression slipped onto his face. "Who did it?" Ling Dongxing was a warrior of the element gathering tier, so there was no way that his spirit base had been disabled from the start. Thus, the logical conclusion was that it had been crippled by someone else. Ling Han was someone who would cover the shortcomings of his own people, moreover this was his own father, so naturally he would be seething in anger. "This matter is related to your mother," Ling Dongxing sighed, and his face revealed a flash of tenderness, though there also seemed to be remorse and wrath mixed with it. To put it shortly, it was an extremely complicated expression. "Mother?" Ling Han murmured. According to this body's memories, Ling Dongxing had never once mentioned anything about his mother to him. Every time he asked about his mother, Ling Dongxing would immediately change the subject. The only thing he knew was that, not long after his birth, his mother had passed away. "In the past, I thought that the issue about your mother would forever be buried within the depths of my heart, but now Ling Dongxing paused. "Honor, if you can achieve element gathering tier within 3 years' time, then I shall tell you about your mother. She's not dead." A powerful excitement rose up within Ling Han's heart. The heavens were truly generous to him, not only gifting him with fatherly love, but also gifting him with the chance to obtain motherly love as well. He laughed heartily, and said, "How difficult would that be? I don't need 3 years, I will be able to break through to element gathering tier within 3 months' time." Ling Dongxing was shaken. 3 months to break through from the 4th layer of body refining tier to element gathering tier? Was this possible? Even for him, who had once been acclaimed as the greatest genius of Grey Cloud Town, it had taken a whole 2 years' time to make such a gigantic leap. But once he recalled that Ling Han had broken through 2 layers within a mere 7 days, to break through to element gathering tier within 3 months didn't look all that impossible. He was startled for a moment, before he said, "Very well. If you can break through to element gathering tier within 3 months, then I shall tell you everything, and you will be the one to go and rescue your mother." Rescue? This meant that his mother was currently confined in some place. No wonder Ling Dongxing had always deceived him by saying his mother had passed away, so it had been a white lie. Ling Han nodded, but he still said with a smile, "Doesn't father want to rescue mother with your own hands?" Ling Dongxing's fierce eyes widened, and he showed an excited expression, yet very quickly calmed down again. He said, "My spirit base is already destroyed, I have to take return origin pills just to recover origin power, there is no way for me to advance forward. And to save your mother would require at least the cultivation level of flower blossom tier." Aside from the legendary shattering void tier, there were in total 9 tiers in martial arts, which were respectively body refining, element gathering, gushing spring, spiritual ocean, spiritual pedestal, flower blossom, spiritual infant, deity transformation and heaven tiers. Flower blossom tier, the 6th tier. What kind of concept was this? The strongest warrior of the 8 great clans of Rain Country was only of the spiritual pedestal tier, and according to the rumors, the Imperial clan possessed extremely powerful warriors of the flower blossom tier to keep watch over the central administration, which was what kept the 8 great clans in check, ensuring they have no thoughts of trying anything funny. Someone who had reached the cultivation of the flower blossom tier would be able to start their own country to hand down to their descendants. However, to Ling Han, who had once been a warrior of the heaven tier, so what if it was the flower blossom tear? And in this new life, all of his starting conditions were even more outstanding: immortal grade spirit base, indestructible heaven scroll. Moreover, he had already passed through all 9 tiers of martial arts once, so there was no way he would encounter any kind of bottleneck, and his excellent alchemist skills would be able to provide him with all kinds of alchemical pills and medicines. 30 years, at most, 50 years, and he would be able to once again return to the pinnacle. Ling Han laughed and said, "Father, the spirit base is a part of the body. There is no such thing as being unable to heal the spirit base. Just let me take a look." Ling Dongxing stared at Ling Han for a while before he finally nodded, and said, "Very well." He raised both arms as if he were holding something and, with a mental command, he projected the spirit base in his dantian into open view. Ling Han was slightly shocked. Ling Dongxing's spirit base was surprisingly the low-level heaven-grade, broken-edge sword, of the gold alignment. No wonder that even though Ling Dongxing had long had his spirit base crippled, he was still in the 9th layer of element-gathering tier. That was because the speed of his cultivation was very quick, and he had long since achieved this kind of cultivation level. However, currently this broken-edge sword had long lost its blade, and only a bit of the sword hilt was left behind. There was no possible way that it could continue to absorb spiritual qi, so it was practically completely destroyed. The destruction of the spirit base meant that it was no longer possible for the owner's martial arts to improve further. However, making it recover was of no difficulty to Ling Han. He said, "Father, your spirit base can still be healed, but I currently do not have the necessary medicinal ingredients on hand, so I need some time." There really was hope. Ling Dongxing could not help it as his hands tightened into fists. If he could, he would of course want to personally save his wife from her abyss of suffering, but because his spirit base had been destroyed, he could only place his hopes on his son. In the past, when Ling Han's spirit base was awakened, and yet it was revealed to be the 5 elements disarray spirit base, Ling Dongxing felt unbearably disappointed and painful. From that moment, he gave up his hopes and deceived Ling Han by saying his mother had already died, shouldering all the pain and longing by himself. "Honor, is what you're saying the truth?" he asked in a trembling voice. "Of course it's the truth," Ling Han replied solemnly. "Give me 3 years, no, 2 years' time, and I will definitely find the medicinal ingredients for father and create an alchemical pill to heal father's spirit base." Ling Dongxing said generously, "Very well, then at that time, the 2 of us, father and son, will join forces to save your mother and reunite our family." Ling Han nodded. "However, you will still have to obediently go to Huyang Academy for me." Ling Dongxing suddenly switched the topic. Ling Han could not help feeling a little depressed. Had already displayed such excellent talents, so why did his old man still not believe him, and compel him to go to Huyang Academy? However, his father's doing was all for his sake, and was well meant. Since his father wanted him to go so much, then he'd just go. It didn't matter where he cultivated anyway. Moreover, Grey Cloud Town was too small, and could not possibly supply the cultivation resources he required anyway. Chapter 14, Predecessor's Obsession. Ling Han revealed the despicable deeds done by Ling Zhongquan, his sons and his grandson to Ling Dongxing. That group of people obviously would not be giving up just like this, and they'd definitely try to do something, so Ling Dongxing needed to be prepared for it. "I understand." Ling Dongxing seemed extremely confident. He had been openly competing with Ling Zhongquan for many years, yet Ling Zhongquan could only remain as the chief butler, completely suppressed by him. Years ago, Ling Dongxing also used to be a favored, proud genius, an all-powerful existence within the clan. If it was not for the destruction of his spirit base, someone like Ling Zhongquan would be nothing in his eyes. "Hang, he dared to bully my son. If I don't beat him to the point that he has to be bedridden for a month, then my surname isn't Ling," he said ruthlessly, eyes cold. "So my old man is also someone who would cover for his own people." Those words were very much to Ling Han's liking. Ling Han spoke with his father for a moment longer before leaving. As the head of a large clan, Ling Dongxing naturally had many matters to deal with. Moreover, he still had to go and thrash Ling Zhongquan, that old dog who dared to take advantage of his absence to bully his son. Ling Han had no interest to see that old dog being helplessly and mercilessly thrashed by Ling Dongxing. He returned to his room to start considering the direction he should take in the future. Cultivation would definitely require the support of alchemical pills, and the reason he had reached heaven tier in a mere 200 years in his last life was because he himself was a genius alchemist. However, even a clever housewife cannot cook a meal without rice. Although he now had in his hands all kinds of knowledge about alchemy, he still needed the ingredients for concocting pills. And the higher the grade of the alchemical pill, the more priceless and valuable the ingredients needed would be. Actually, if someone were to compare the Ling clan's wealth with the cost of these ingredients, the results could be summed up with only one word: poor. He had to do something. Otherwise, the speed of his cultivation would definitely be unable to achieve the expected standard. To put it simply, he had to earn money. Ling Han currently managed to think of two ways. Firstly, sale of cultivation techniques and martial arts skills. In his last life, he had accumulated a staggering number of top-rate secret arts. Should he take any one of them to an auction, he'd definitely earn an astronomical wealth. However, this was not appropriate. Because the current Ling Han was simply much too weak. If he still had the cultivation level of heaven tier, then even if he released a heaven-grade cultivation technique, others naturally would not dare to have any evil ideas. However, if he did something like that now, he would only become a target for others to force him to hand over even more cultivation techniques. If he really did have to sell any cultivation techniques or martial arts skills, he could only sell those that were not too far from his current martial arts skill level. Moreover, he couldn't sell too many at a time. Then that left only the second method, which was to sell alchemical pills. This was his original profession. Besides, alchemy was a very respected profession. Whoever dared to disrespect an alchemist could easily cause public outrage, so there would definitely be serious consideration before anyone attempted such an idiotic thing. Within the current Rain country, at least 80% of the country's alchemists were involved with the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, while the remaining 20% were esteemed guests of the various great clans and factions. The alchemical pills concocted by them would thus only be used by members of these great powers, without any possibility of them being sold in public. Lastly, there were a few alchemists who were loners, and were not working for any kind of power. If they lacked money, they would simply concoct alchemical pills for sale. Thus, they were completely free from any obligations. For example, in Grey Cloud Town, the supply of high-grade alchemical pills and medicines would only be found in the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, so those who wanted to buy them could only choose to go there. Low-grade alchemical pills would be distributed for sale in batches by Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, offered to the two great clans in the town. Thus, there would be mutual benefit for both the two great clans and the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. After all, the two great clans were very influential in the area. The two great clans referred to Ling clan and Qing clan. Both clans would be able to obtain 50% of the total low-grade alchemical pills from the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion respectively. However, although the two great clans only obtained very little profit when compared to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, in terms of alchemical pills, they could be said to have gained an overwhelming profit. Alchemy was an extremely high-paying profession. This was also one of the reasons why alchemists would be regarded as esteemed guests by the various great powers. If the various clans and factions did not have their own alchemists, then their purchase of alchemical pills and medicines would incur a horrifyingly astronomical expense. In this life, Ling Han did not plan to exert too much effort in the path of alchemy. Thus, he only wanted to become a lone alchemist. If he lacked money, then he would concoct a few pills. It was enough as long as he had sufficient funds at his disposal. Then it's decided, I'll use alchemy as a support for my martial arts. However, now that Ling Dongxing had returned, Ling Han's freedom was also restricted. His old man was rushing him to immediately go to the academy. Naturally not Huyang Academy, but Grey Cloud Academy. Huyang Academy was established by the imperial clan of Rain Country, and while Grey Cloud Academy was also established by the government, there was no way to compare the two academies' resources. After all, the disparity was simply too large. However, Ling Dongxing still had hopes that Ling Han could become an overnight celebrity in Grey Cloud Academy. All fathers naturally wanted their sons to excel and become successful people. Ling Han naturally would not want to disappoint his father, so he could only agree to go to the academy. He didn't have much to do anyway, so he'd just go to the academy for a few days and show off a bit to satisfy his father's ambition. This way, Ling Dongxing wouldn't see any need to restrict him further. Moreover, he also wanted to realize his predecessor's long-cherished wish and clear his reputation of being a piece of trash. When he departed, Lu Yutong naturally was beside him, and the both of them arrived at Grey Cloud Academy. However, it was not very appropriate for Lu Yutong to accompany him even during classes, so she could only walk around in the academy. Her prowess also meant that she had no fear of anyone trying anything funny with her because of her extreme beauty. Ling Han walked slowly. It was not a must for him to attend classes. It was more than enough to just come to the academy. The reason why he was here was only out of respect for his father. He would not blindly obey Ling Dongxing's every single word. Just as he came to the martial training court, he could not help but pause in his steps as a strong pounding rose up within his body, causing him to, for some reason, turn and head in the direction of the martial training court. This was an obsession originating from his predecessor. Hi's predecessor had in total two matters that he could not let go of. The first was naturally his father, and the second was a woman within this Grey Cloud Academy. If he had not come, it would not have affected him, but now that he was here, this obsession immediately became incomparably heavy. His predecessor had once liked a woman by the name of Shen Ziyan. She was a student of Grey Cloud Academy, and the entanglement between the two of them was an extremely complicated one. 7 years ago, when Shen Ziyan was just a little girl at the age of 10, she had already displayed a surprising beauty. Ling Dongxing acted quickly and arranged an engagement contract between her and Ling Han. Because the Ling clan was one of the two great clans in town and Ling Han was the son of the clan's clan head, the Shen clan naturally had no objection and gladly agreed to this match. However, when Ling Han was 12, through examination, his spirit base was confirmed to be 5 elements disarray spirit base. If it was just this, then according to the power of the Ling clan, the Shen clan would still not dare to have any wild thoughts. The problem was that Shen Ziyan had a high-level Earth-grade spirit base. Moreover, Shen Ziyan was also extremely gifted in martial arts, so she managed to live up to such an excellent spirit base. As her cultivation level soared, she was regarded as a treasure by the higher-ups of the academy, who always meant to send her to Huyang Academy because they believed that only there would her talent truly blossom. As the two of them grew up, and the gap between Shen Ziyan and Ling Han's cultivation levels widened ever further, she finally requested the Ling clan to break the engagement contract. Ling Dongxing naturally did not want to agree. This would not only be a blow to the pride of the Ling clan, but would also break his son's heart. Yet his predecessor agreed, because his affection for his woman was bone deep. Although they were now no more than strangers, his predecessor was still very much in love with the girl and kept on secretly paying attention to her all this while. The strength of his affection was so big that, even though his predecessor had already died, the body's instinctive reaction was to follow it, affecting the current Ling Han. I need to get rid of this obsession, otherwise, in the future, this may become my inner demon and affect my progress, Ling Han thought. As someone who used to be a warrior of the heaven tier, he naturally knew the danger an inner demon represented. Then I'll go to see her once more. After this, there will no longer be any relation between the two of us. Ling Han thought, as if negotiating with his predecessor. Chapter 15, Kneel. Ling Han walked into the martial training court and saw a beautiful young girl practicing martial arts skills in the center. She was wearing a white warrior dress and her movements were as graceful as a deity's. Around her was a number of young men and women who had gathered to watch. The young women's gazes were heated whilst the men wore intoxicated expressions as they observed her practice. That young girl was Shen Ziyan. Every day, she would be cultivating in this location. She truly was very beautiful, but when compared to Lu Yutong, her beauty fell short. Moreover, Ling Han had long been used to seeing remarkably stunning beauties in his last life, so naturally he was not moved. His predecessor was a hopeless romantic. However, now that he was dead, the one in charge was he who had once been a warrior of the heaven tier. Ling Han took a deep breath. He felt the last remnants of his predecessor's obsessive feelings vanish into thin air. Now he was finally the one and only owner of this body. His predecessor had two things he could not let go of. One was his father, and the other was Shen Ziyan. Now that these two obsessions have been completely neutralized, the predecessor could finally and completely depart, and no longer have the slightest bit of effect over this body. In truth, his predecessor knew very well that he and Shen Ziyan could never be, so he had only meant to secretly admire her from afar. Otherwise, if this obsession was something like wanting to marry her and no one else, Ling Han would be in big trouble. Get out of here. It was at this moment that Shen Ziyan stopped her movements and shouted these words coldly at him. How overbearing, did she think that her family owned the martial training court? Naturally, Ling Han didn't want to even bother with this kind of condescending, arrogant girl who thought the whole world revolved around her. After all, the obsession had vanished, and in his opinion, Shen Ziyan simply could not be considered incomparably beautiful, nor was she shockingly talented. She really didn't even have the qualifications for him to consider her for one moment longer. For the sake of his predecessor, he did not react to her insulting words, and turned away, intending to leave. Stop right there. A young man dressed in embroidered clothing sprang out and, with a few steps, rushed in front of Ling Han, blocking his way. He said, "Didn't you hear younger sister disciple Shen's words? She told you to roll out of here. You don't use your legs to roll." His name was Cheng Hao, and he was the second son of the clan head of the other great clan in Grey Cloud Town. He was also one of Shen Ziyan's admirers. However, Shen Ziyan had never treated him any differently from the others. Now, he had finally found an opportunity to show off in front of her, teach Ling Han a hard lesson in order to obtain Shen Ziyan's favor. Moreover, this was not the first time he had bullied Ling Han, because among the people he could bully, Ling Han's status was the highest, and thus bullying him gave him the most satisfaction. Ling Han's eyes automatically turned severe. The images of his predecessor being bullied by Cheng Hao played vividly before his eyes. Originally, he would not have bothered had Cheng Hao remained a simple face in the crowd, but now that he had spotted Cheng Hao, even if the latter had not provoked him in this manner, he had no plans of letting matters rest. "Are you looking to die?" he said in a murderous voice. "Ha ha ha ha, Ling Trash, are you threatening me?" Cheng Hao gave a laugh, yet very quickly his gaze turned severe. "We haven't seen each other for just a few days, and now you've grown so brave that you actually dare to talk back to me?" Everyone in the area started laughing. Ling Han's identity as a piece of trash was well known throughout the whole academy, so these words naturally seemed like the greatest joke in the world to them. Ling Han smiled coldly and walked towards Cheng Hao. "What is it now? Are you going to beg me to spare you?" "If you're going to beg, then make sure you speak loudly enough," Cheng Hao said nonchalantly. "Pa!" It was at this moment that a sharp, crisp slap was heard, causing everyone's laughter to suddenly stop. Cheng Hao covered his face with one hand, his face expressed his utter disbelief. Just now, he had actually been given a slap by Ling Han, given a slap by a piece of trash. How great a humiliation was this? He immediately entered berserk mode, and blue veins popped up all over his forehead as he said thickly, "Are you tired of living that you actually dare to hit me?" "I can't hit you," Ling Han said calmly. His predecessor had been bullied by Cheng Hao numerous times. He was only getting back a little interest now. "How dare you!" Cheng Hao never thought that Ling Han would not only not beg for his life out of panic, but actually dared to talk back to him. He was originally already extremely furious, so how could he hold himself back now? He immediately raised his hand, which flew towards Ling Han. The current Ling Han was in the 4th layer of body refining tier. Even though that was still 2 layers lower than Cheng Hao, they were both in the middle stage of body refining tier. With Ling Han's battle experience as someone who had once wielded the power of the heaven tier, how could he possibly lose? Pa! Cheng Hao had just raised his hand, but Ling Han had already reacted accordingly and his right hand flew out. Although he acted later, he reached his target earlier and, once again, another solid slap landed on Cheng Hao's face. With the great strength behind this slap, Cheng Hao staggered, causing the hand he raised to only hit empty air. Trash! Ling Han said in a calm tone, shaking his head. Everyone was silent. This label of trash originally belonged to Ling Han, but now no one could find it in themselves to laugh, for Cheng Hao had indeed been slapped twice. If the first time could be considered to be the fault of Cheng Hao's carelessness, then the second time could only be Ling Han's display of ability. But how was this possible? Wasn't Ling Han the publicly acclaimed biggest piece of trash in the whole academy? Meanwhile, Cheng Hao had been enraged to the point that both his eyes had turned red. With a great roar, he threw himself at Ling Han. However, the difference between himself and Ling Han was much too large. Pa! 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 No matter how he attacked, Ling Han somehow managed to act later yet hit first, each slap causing him to stumble. His attack power naturally subsided by itself. I see now, Ling Han's power is actually not as strong as Cheng Hao's. It seems to be only somewhere around 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier. However, his 6th sense is too terrifying. Every time Cheng Hao makes a move, it's as if he already knew where Cheng Hao would attack, and make the necessary adjustments in advance. 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier? That can't be. He has the 5 elements disarray spirit base, so even if he wants to break through to the middle stage of the body refining tier, he would only be able to achieve that at least after he's 20. No matter what his cultivation level is, just his skill in reading attacks is scary enough. After watching for a period of time, the students in the area too discovered this secret. The secret was actually something very simple. Ling Han would predict all of Cheng Hao's attacks and react accordingly in advance to compensate for the gap between their cultivation levels. Meanwhile, Cheng Hao was completely slapped silly. There was a persistent buzzing in his head and his face was scarlet and swollen, turning it into a pig's head. Only the fury he felt kept on supporting his continuous attacks, but all of it was pointless effort. He was finally scared, and no longer dared to make any move. But how could Ling Han just let matters go like this? Pa! 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 He kept up a furious litany of slaps, and Cheng Hao's lip very quickly was split. Fresh blood was spilled, and he looked extremely pitiful. At this moment, no one dared to step up and intervene. I surrender this time, don't hit me anymore, Cheng Hao pleaded. However, Ling Han did not stop his movements. In the past, when Cheng Hao bullied his predecessor, when had he ever been merciful? He thrashed him for a moment longer, before he said, "Kneel." What? Cheng Hao felt this was utterly absurd. This trash actually dared tell him to kneel. If he really knelt, then not only would his pride be completely shattered, even the Qing clan would be laughed at by others. After all, he was the second son of the Qing clan's clan head. This was too much. Even when he and his older brother had bullied Ling Han in the past, they had only dared to thrash the other until his whole body was covered with injuries. They had not dared to make the other kneel down. This could possibly spark off a blood feud between the two clans. Chapter 16, Crawl Out of Here. Ling Han, don't go too far. Cheng Hao raised his head and said. He could not and would not yield on this matter. Ling Han laughed thickly and said, and here I was afraid you might yield and cause me to have no more reason to kill you. This guy wants to kill me? Cheng Hao's whole body shivered. He looked at Ling Han only to see a harsh expression on his face. He was obviously not joking. He couldn't control the trembling of his body and said, "Do you want to induce a blood feud between the two great clans? Do you want to become the greatest sinner in the history of the Ling clan? A tiny little Qing clan, and you think you're worthy of flopping around in front of me?" Ling Han said disdainfully, "If your Qing clan dare to make a move, I will eliminate the whole lot of you." Boom, everyone in the surrounding area erupted with voices. What big words! The Ling and the Cheng were both powerful clans in Grey Cloud Town. Their strength was fairly equal, and should there be a dispute between the two, neither side would win and would only come off worse. As a result, although the two clans both had the desire to get rid of the other and thus gain sole authority over Grey Cloud Town, neither dared to make the first move. Ling Han, this trash, actually said that he would single-handedly eliminate the Qing clan. Was he joking? However, looking at the fierce look on Ling Han's face at the moment, his whole body exuding an indescribable might, for some reason, it caused everyone in the area to become speechless. They all had the same feeling, and that was the young man in front of them at this moment was no longer the so-called trash they knew. There were even some girls whose gazes had grown bright. How manly, their knees actually felt a little weak. How boastful of you, there isn't need for anyone else. My older brother alone would be able to single-handedly suppress you. Cheng Hao shouted, his whole expression filled with obstinate defiance. In his eyes, Ling Han was only a toy that had been bullied numerous times by him and his older brother, Qing Xiang. Now that Ling Han had turned the tables on him to suppress him, this was something that he could not accept in any way or manner. Pa! Ling Han gave him another slap, and asked in an awe-inspiring tone, "So you really want to die then?" If the Qing clan intended to make any kind of retaliation against him, he would not mind eliminating the Qing clan using this opportunity, considering Zhu Hexian's respect towards him. Having him take action naturally would only be a small issue. And while Zhu Hexian was no genius in martial arts, he at least had the cultivation of the gushing spring tear. It would be a piece of cake for him to eliminate the Qing clan. So should the Qing clan want to bring about their own destruction so desperately, he would not mind using Zhu Hexian to get rid of them. Cheng Hao could not help himself as cold sweat rolled down his face. In front of Ling Han, he felt an incomparable pressure, and also felt the threat of imminent death. This young man in front of him was no longer the Ling Han of the past, whom he had bullied numerous times. He was now a terrifying god of death. Pa! He could not help the weakening of his legs as he knelt on the ground. Faced with the choice between his life and his pride, he would cast away his pride without any second thought. After all, once you die, everything is over. He really knelt down. The whole area was in an uproar. Cheng Hao was the second young master of the Qing clan, and could to a large degree represent the entire Qing clan. Someone like that had actually knelt down. Moreover, the one he was kneeling down in front of was a member of the clan which was Qing clan's enemy. This could practically be engraved on the Qing clan's plaque of dishonor. So Cheng Hao was actually someone who would bully the weak but tremble before the strong. Why did no one realize his cowardly character in the past? Everyone wanted to know the answer. But after thinking it over, this was quite normal. After all, Cheng Hao had always been in the spotlight as the second young master of the Qing clan. Who would dare oppose him? Thus, of course it would be impossible for anyone to find out that, underneath his overbearing, arrogant exterior, he was actually a big coward. But Ling Han really was too overbearing. He had actually forced the second young master of the Qing clan to kneel down. Wasn't he afraid of provoking a great war between the two clans? So cool. The numerous girls that were already infatuated and love-struck because of Ling Han's previous actions shrieked loudly. Ling Han, have you done enough? Cheng Hao said with gritted teeth. There was only one thought in his head at this moment, and that was to leave this location, then come charging back with his older brother, regaining his lost pride and avenging the dishonor and insult he had suffered. Crawl out of here. Ling Han said calmly. What? Cheng Hao thought that he had heard wrongly. Pa! Ling Han gave a kick to Cheng Hao's back, forcing him to hold himself up with both hands on the ground. Ling Han, you dare insult me in this way, I want to kill you. Kill you. Cheng Hao was about to go mad. Kneeling down was already the greatest insult he could imagine, but if he also had to actually drop onto the ground like this? And actually crawl out of here? So what if I insult you? Trash. Ling Han said coldly. Haven't the Qing brothers insulted him enough in the past? The reason why the Qing brothers dared to act that way was because they were stronger than his predecessor, and the adults definitely could not interfere in this kind of dispute amongst the younger generation, at least as long as there was no death or permanent injury. Otherwise, they would be laughed at by others. You either crawl out of here, or you die here, make your choice, Ling Han said. So domineering, was this really the Ling Han they knew? Everyone was struck dumb and speechless. In the past, they had all laughed at Ling Han for being a piece of trash, but what kind of trash would actually dare to force the second son of the Qing clan to kneel down and crawl like a dog in public? He was freaking awesome. Cheng Hao was sweating like crazy. He had no desire to become a sinner of the clan, and even more didn't want to be shamed in public. However, facing the possibility of death, his willpower was simply too weak. Very quickly, he moved his hands, starting to crawl on the ground. Ha 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 ha. Everyone around them started laughing. Suddenly it was as if the laughter was contagious, causing even more people to start following their lead and laugh. The second young master of the Qing clan crawling around like a dog, this was not something that could be seen every day. Cheng Hao's tears gushed out instantly. He gripped his fists tightly, and swore in his heart that he would definitely kill Ling Han. Definitely. He crawled for more than 10 steps, then immediately pushed up from the ground, and rushed out of the martial training court. He wanted to find his older brother, Qing Xiang, and kill Ling Han. Kill. 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 Pa, pa, pa. Applause rose up and attracted everyone's attention. Everyone fell silent and looked towards the slender, beautiful girl who just clapped her hands. Shen Ziyan stopped clapping and said, I have to admit, this was a very exciting performance. However, do you think you can move me with something like this? You're deluding yourself, don't think I don't know what your intentions are. Unfortunately, the gap between you and I is far too wide. You can't even compare to my little finger. To be liked by someone like you is a complete insult to myself. You think too highly of yourself. Idiot. Ling Han shook his head. For the sake of his predecessor, he did not want to bother with his foolish girl. With my talent in martial arts, I will definitely be famous in future, and create miracles even though I am a girl. Shen Ziyan said loftily. You do not have to say anything anymore. I know that everything you have done was to attract my interest, but very unfortunately, I will never look at a small character like you. Everything between us has long ended. I don't mind telling you, I've already obtained the invitation to Huyang Academy, and will officially become a disciple of Huyang Academy next year. You, a mere piece of trash, actually dare to like me? You are not qualified. Not qualified. Not qualified. Fine, she can say everything she wants. Liking her. And that was the natural course of events. She was beautiful and extremely gifted in martial arts, so she must definitely be admired. If you say you don't like her, damn, then you must be deliberately saying contrary words to attract her attention. To be narcissistic to this point, she was definitely a weirdo. Even Ling Han was struck speechless. Usually when he's faced with this kind of shameless person, he would directly give a good, solid slap. 9th layer of body refining tier, a bit challenging, but not impossible. Ling Han's eyes grew cold, and he was just about to walk over when his eyes fell upon a beautiful figure walking slowly into the martial training court. Lu Yutong. She was an extraordinarily beautiful woman who would become the focus of everything wherever she went. Very quickly, everyone's attention was attracted by her beautiful figure. Suddenly, everyone put on a stunned expression. She was so beautiful. Shen Ziyan was indeed a beautiful girl, but when compared with this person, she fell short. Moreover, this girl had an indescribably graceful bearing, as if she was a noble princess. In comparison, Shen Ziyan's so-called beauty was overshadowed to the point she looked like a village girl. At this moment, there was only one thought in everyone's heart: who was she? Was she a goddess come down from the heavens? How could her beauty be so cool and elegant? Those who dared to have any thoughts about her felt like they were committing blasphemy. Under everyone's dumbstruck stares, Lu Yutong had already passed Ling Han by and, without a single pause, continued walking forwards. This was natural. If Lu Yutong had actually stopped, they would have been even more shocked. A mere piece of trash. How could he possibly have any relation to this cool and elegant goddess? Shen Ziyan felt great pressure. The other's beauty caused even her to feel her own inferiority in comparison, causing her to go mad with jealousy. The other was not just a little bit more beautiful than her. In all the categories, looks, figure and demeanor, she was completely overwhelmed, so no matter how much she didn't want to admit it, she could only grit her teeth in secret. Lu Yutong stopped in front of Shen Ziyan, and with a wave of her hand, a slap sounded against the other's face. Pa! Crisp, loud and clear. Shen Ziyan was slapped stupid, but she immediately flared up in fury. With a wave of her right hand, a similar slap flew towards Lu Yutong. But what could the 9th layer of body refining tier do against the 9th layer of element gathering tier? Pa! Lu Yutong's hand once again rose and flew down, and another solid slap resounded against Shen Ziyan's face a second time. With these two slaps, Shen Ziyan's beautiful hair was messed up, her beautiful face swollen, and she looked a little poignant, but her eyes were filled with fury and poison, as if she wanted to devour someone. She gave a sharp scream and once again, attacked Lu Yutong. But this was obviously pointless effort. Pa! 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 She was repeatedly slapped, as if she was a doll without any ability of retaliation. Everyone gasped. These two girls seemed to be about the same age, so why was the difference in ability between them so wide? Who on earth was this icy beauty, and why was she, for some reason, slapping Shen Ziyan? What right do you have to be proud? Lu Yutong asked coldly. Chapter 17, Qingxiang has arrived. You think you're a martial arts genius? Lu Yutong said coldly. I am 17 years old this year just like you, but I am already in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. What about you? Pooh. These words caused everyone to gasp in astonishment. The 9th layer of element gathering tier, what kind of concept was that? Only the strongest of the strong in Grey Cloud Town had this kind of cultivation level. Shen Ziyan was indeed a genius. Those who had achieved the 9th layer of body refining tier at the age of 17 were definitely an uncommon existence in the history of Grey Cloud Town. On average, there would only be 2 or 3 of such geniuses every 100 years, and each one of them demonstrated extraordinary talent in their lifetime, going on to become famous and leave their mark in the history of Rain Country. But when compared with Lu Yutong, Shen Ziyan couldn't even hold a candle to the former. A 17-year-old managed to achieve the 9th layer of element gathering tier, even in the vast territory of Rain Country. How many such geniuses would appear in 100 years? Lu Yutong no longer suppressed her power, and released the majestic aura of a warrior in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. In an instant, everyone in the surrounding area could sense the strength hidden within her body. Shen Ziyan bore the brunt of it as the one closest to Lu Yutong. Underneath this powerful aura, she abruptly lowered her head. She wasn't even qualified to look directly at Lu Yutong. This was unacceptable to the arrogant Shen Ziyan, and as she struggled to raise her head to look directly at her opponent, her eyes were filled with fear, despair, and confusion. Why was there suddenly an appearance of someone her own age, but with both beauty and brilliant talent, that even she had no choice but to admit her inferiority? Furthermore, why had such a person given her a slap out of the blue? How dare you look down on him? Lu Yutong spoke, turning to point at Ling Han, and once more turned to look at Shen Ziyan. You're completely unqualified. What? She was here to defend Ling Han. Whether it was Shen Ziyan or everyone else, they were all in a state of complete disbelief. This girl with elegant and noble bearing, unparalleled beauty and shocking talent in martial arts was actually acquainted with Trash Ling? Being acquainted with each other was inconceivable enough, and yet she had actually defended Ling Han. How could anyone accept this? Especially the guys in the area, they all felt like they were about to die of jealousy. Shen Ziyan gritted her teeth, her eyes spitting fire. She had now transferred all her fury onto Ling Han. That was because Lu Yutong was too strong, and she dared not have even the slightest thought of revenge. However, Ling Han was a different story. With his cultivation level at the 4th layer of body refining tier, in her eyes, he could be finished off in a single blow. Moreover, everything was because of Ling Han. He had deliberately made fun of her, so she spoke to him in mockery. As a result, she was publicly slapped by Lu Yutong, and had disgraced herself. However, in truth, had she not insulted Ling Han in the first place, he would have long left. Then the subsequent course of events would never have happened. But with her self-centered personality, how could she possibly reflect on her own behavior? So naturally she would push all the fault onto another person's shoulders. She pointed at Ling Han, and spoke shrilly, "In what way am I not qualified? Isn't this guy just a piece of trash?" Trash? Have you seen a piece of trash that could break through 2 layers within a single night? And what kind of trash would cause a black-grade alchemist to beg just to be able to follow by his side? Naturally Lu Yutong did not intend to inform Shen Ziyan about any of this, so she only said, "Such a short-sighted woman like yourself naturally cannot see that underneath the dust lies gold, underneath the darkness hides a pearl. You have already missed out on your chance, so there's no point in pointing out his brightness to you." As she spoke, Lu Yutong felt a little irritated. Ling Han had actually admired a woman like this. Of course, she would never admit that she was jealous. Ha 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 ha. Shen Ziyan laughed loudly before pointing at Ling Han and said, "He's gold, he's a pearl. What kind of joke are you playing? He's nothing more but a piece of trash, a complete, utter piece of trash. In less than 3 months, he will become someone that all of you would only be able to look up to," Lu Yutong said assuredly. She did not know why Ling Han had kept such a low profile in the past, but now he was obviously going to display his brilliance, dazzling to the point that the sun would look pale in comparison. Hearing these words, everyone sneered. Although Ling Han had truly defeated Cheng Hao, but his actual cultivation level was only the 4th layer of body refining tier, or the 5th layer, at most. Although this kind of cultivation level was not considered trash, it was still very far off from being proclaimed as a genius, not to mention actually becoming someone that everyone would only look up to. Lu Yutong's almond eyes widened. The aura of a warrior of 9th layer of element gathering tier trembled slightly, and suddenly all the taunting laughter came to a complete stop. "Ling Han, how dare you!" At this moment, a furious roar was heard as 2 figures quickly rushed into the martial training court. One of the figures was none other than Cheng Hao. The other figure seemed to be slightly older than him, with a few similarities in their features. This was Cheng Hao's older brother, Cheng Xiang, currently 19 years old, 9th layer of body refining tier. Both were at the 9th layer of body refining tier. One was 17, the other was 19. There was no comparison between their respective natural talent. Of course, a 19-year-old who has achieved the 9th layer of body refining tier would still be able to claim the title of a genius in Grey Cloud Town, although he was not as extraordinary as Shen Ziyan. Peng, 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 Cheng Xiang's steps echoed loudly, hinting at his current terrifying state of utter fury. He stopped about 3 meters away from Ling Han, pointed at him, and said, "What despicable means have you used?" Ling Han smiled coldly, and said, "So I won only because I made use of despicable means? Of course, otherwise, how could a piece of trash like you ever defeat my younger brother?" Cheng Xiang spoke loudly. Unlike Ling Han's infamous reputation as a piece of trash, if today's issue was not appropriately handled, the Qing clan's reputation would definitely be seriously impacted. Thus, whether it was true that Ling Han had made use of despicable means or not, he had to insist that he had done so. Hearing the word trash, everyone's expressions became very strange. Shen Ziyan had just said something similar, and the result was being repeatedly slapped by Lu Yutong. This elite warrior of the 9th layer of element gathering tier is still here, and you actually dare to publicly curse at Ling Han? Isn't this just asking for trouble? With Ling Han's experience, he naturally could tell with a glance what Qing Xiang's intentions were. He did not reveal them though, and only slowly said, "Oh, then how do I prove that I did not make use of those despicable means you're speaking of?" "Hein, you used despicable means to bully my younger brother. As an older brother, how can I pretend that I did not see anything? Since you're so brave, then I dare you to spar with me." Qing Xiang obviously came well prepared. Everyone could not help thinking, how shameless. You are already in the 9th layer of body refining tier, while Ling Han is only in the 4th layer of body refining tier. The difference of 5 layers, how could he compare to you? However, as long as Ling Han was given a harsh beating, it would weaken the degree of embarrassment caused by Cheng Hao's previous actions, and also help to avenge Cheng Hao. This was a very smart move, and could be said to be hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Ling Han's smile disappeared and he shook his head, saying, "You are in the 9th layer of body refining tier, while I'm only in the 4th layer of body refining tier. Doesn't this seem very unjust? I don't mind if you find someone to take your place in the spar." Cheng Hao laughed loudly. Naturally, he was very familiar with Ling Han's label as trash. With such reputation, no one would befriend him in the whole academy, so where on earth could he find anyone to help him? Furthermore, even if he did find someone to help him, what about it? Cheng Hao was in the 9th layer of body refining tier, and was one of the strongest in the academy. What did he have to fear? Everyone's expressions once more became very strange. Ling Han really did have someone in his corner. Furthermore, that someone was an extremely strong warrior of the 9th layer of element gathering tier that could, in one move, instantly kill a person in the 9th layer of body refining tier. Wasn't this just looking for death? Chapter 18, Lone Wolf's Blood. Lu Yutong stepped forward and said, "I will take his place." Qing Xiang's attention was previously completely focused on Ling Han, so it was only now that he noticed Lu Yutong. Seeing this incredibly stunning icy beauty, he couldn't help but stare. How was it possible that such a beautiful woman existed in this world? Wait, did she just say she would be taking Ling Han's place in the spar? A powerful feeling of jealousy and anger arose within Qing Xiang. What right did a piece of trash like Ling Han have to possess such a beautiful woman? This was unjust and completely laughable. He quickly said, "Miss, you must be new here, and must have been deceived by this guy's pretty words. He is the trash from Ling clan. This is something that everyone in this academy knows very well." A fiery anger immediately flashed in Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes. She could not help getting angered when she heard these people insult Ling Han. What right do these people have to insult him in this way? Don't, just now it was a woman, so I did not mind you doing my work for me. But now the opponent is a man, and a duel between men should be settled between men, Ling Han said with a shake of his head, one hand placed on Lu Yutong's shoulder. Seeing such a scene, everyone in the area, even the females, felt that they were about to go mad with jealousy. Ling Han actually had such intimate contact with their goddess. What enraged them even further was the fact that Lu Yutong actually did not appear to resist it at all. Lu Yutong frowned slightly. Qing Xiang was different from Cheng Hao by far. The former was in the 9th layer of body refining tier, and thus his cultivation level exceeded Ling Han's by a whole 5 layers. She knew Ling Han could perform miracles and possessed the ability to bypass the limitations of cultivation levels to challenge those much stronger than him, but the difference between him and his current opponent was really too large this time. In her opinion, the chance of Ling Han winning was close to 0. "Don't worry, you should have more faith in me," Ling Han said with a smile. "Then let's spar," Qing Xiang said. He did not know how Ling Han had bewitched Lu Yutong, but he believed that once he had publicly defeated Ling Han, this extremely stunning beauty would naturally be able to see Ling Han's true colors. Ling Han once again nodded towards Lu Yutong, and the icy beauty finally stepped back. This little female attendant of his was really quite interesting. Ling Han smiled. Once he turned towards Qingxiang though, his expression became cautious. The gap of a whole 5 layers was big, very big. If Lu Yutong suppressed her power to the 4th layer of body refining tier and battled with Qingxiang, she would only be able to grit her teeth in defeat. Ling Han dared to accept this challenge because he knew a martial arts technique called Lone Wolf's Blood. With every injury, the user would be able to erupt with power that surpassed his actual cultivation level. The heavier the injury, the stronger the power he erupted with would be. In his past life, Ling Han would only be able to take a large amount of alchemical medicines and pills to heal his injuries, but currently, he had no such healing medicines. But that was okay, because he now possessed an even more powerful secret art. Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Come. Ling Han beckoned with a finger. Had already cast away the glory of a warrior of the heaven tier. The current him was only a minor martial artist of the 4th layer of body refining tier. Everything was back to square one. Qingxiang naturally would not treat Ling Han seriously. He started to casually circle around Ling Han, a cold smile on his face. He could easily, effortlessly suppress a mere minor character of the 4th layer of body refining tier. Brother, thrash him. Qing Hao could not help calling out. Presently, his face hurt a lot. Moreover, he had even been forced to kneel and crawl around like a dog in front of everyone, making an embarrassment out of himself. He was naturally filled with furious hatred towards Ling Han. There was one person who shared that feeling, and that was Shenzi Yan. She too hated Ling Han to the bone. Qingxiang nodded, and said, "All of you should take a good look. This is what happens to all who dare to defy our Qing clan." The corners of his lips lifted upwards in a cruel smile, and a powerful punch flew towards Ling Han. Ling Han gave a snort and clenched his fist before similarly flying towards his opponent. What? Seeing such a scene, everyone thought that Ling Han had gone crazy. A head-on power battle between the 4th layer and the 9th layer of body refining tier, this was an extremely stupid move. Previously, wasn't Ling Han very smart? With his fearful ability to foresee attacks, he easily dispersed Cheng Hao's attack's power, and thrashed the latter like he was a dog. But now against the much stronger Qingxiang, he actually cast away this kind of battle technique? Did he think he would not lose fast enough? At this moment, even Lu Yutong felt she was about to lose faith in Ling Han, because this kind of power battle was the purest, truest display of the strength of cultivation levels and disparity in strength. Only Ling Han was filled with confidence. He of course would not be deliberately looking to be beaten. Come. Pung. The 2 fists crashed into each other. If the movement was slowed down by 100 times, it could be clearly seen that, underneath the jolt of power, the skin on Ling Han's arm rose and fell like the water's surface from his fist all the way to his shoulder. Following a pa sound, the rupturing of arteries caused his whole arm to instantly become badly mangled. The power gap truly was much too wide. Teng, 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 Ling Han retreated a whole 7 steps before he finally regained his balance. Ha ha ha, trash will always be trash. Qingxiang laughed coldly. Ever since Ling Han had entered the academy, he had become the target of bullying for him and Cheng Hao. Ling Han thought he could bring about a change in his fate now? In his dreams. Ling Han's face was completely expressionless as the indestructible heaven scroll continued to circulate within his body and the injury of his arm rapidly healed. However, due to the fresh blood covering his arm, his quickly recovering injuries could not be seen. And with his injury, Lone Wolf's blood also started to circulate within his body, causing his power to rise to a new level. 5th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han gave a shout and once again took the initiative, rushing towards Qingxiang. It's no use, Ling trash, you will be a piece of trash your whole life. Qing Xiang laughed loudly and his fist flew towards Ling Han once again. Pung! The 5th layer of body refining tier would still be vulnerable against the 9th layer of body refining tier, so once again, Ling Han was forced to retreat, spilling fresh blood. The right arm that had just healed became badly mangled once again. Qing Xiang looked a little surprised, because he sensed that his opponent's power had increased by a large margin compared to the previous attack, although he was still much weaker than himself. Ling Han simultaneously circulated indestructible heaven scroll and stimulated lone wolf's blood. His eyes shone like a battle wolf's, filled with killing intent. 6th layer of body refining tier. Injury upon injury, Ling Han's power once again increased. He roared and once again threw himself at Qing Xiang. Qing Xiang's strength was extraordinary, but underneath Ling Han's stare, he actually felt a little frightened. He immediately grew angered. This was a piece of trash. For him to actually feel even a bit of dread towards a piece of trash, it was completely laughable. He wanted to defeat Ling Han in one attack and injure him heavily, so that the latter wouldn't be able to get up again. Pung! 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 The two fighters continuously attacked each other. Naturally, Ling Han was at the obvious disadvantage and, with every encounter, his opponent would cause him to suffer heavy injuries. And yet, he would immediately regain his battle spirit each time and retaliate. His determination was unbelievable. Moreover, Ling Han's attacks were becoming fiercer and stronger, and slowly, he was actually able to fight on even footing with Qing Xiang. 7th layer of body refining tier. Qing Xiang was very clear on the fact that Ling Han's power had shockingly risen to the level of 7th layer of body refining tier. Thankfully though, after increasing to such a degree, Ling Han's power did not increase any further. Otherwise, Qing Xiang would truly start to feel fear. It couldn't be helped. After all, the lone wolf's blood also had its limits. It could only help Ling Han increase his power by 3 layers. However, the 7th layer of body refining tier against the 9th layer of body refining tier, the gap in power had shrunk to only 2 layers difference. Chapter 19, Trampled Beneath My Feet. Ling Han was now completely covered in blood. His temporary increase in power to the 7th layer of body refining tier was obtained through sustaining serious injuries. He was now like an injured lone wolf. The more he was injured, the more he refused to surrender. At first, it was as if the crowd was there just to watch a free show. But when they saw Ling Han being repeatedly injured yet continue to retaliate, their feelings, for some reason, were affected by his performance. Even if Ling Han was a piece of trash, he was a piece of trash that deserved their respect. What kind of person could have such determination and unyielding will? To be unyielding even as his blood spilled, to be dauntless facing any and all setbacks. Before they knew it, everyone's thoughts started to lean towards Ling Han, secretly hoping that he would emerge victorious. In the world of martial artists, the weak did not deserve to be pitied, but an unyielding warrior would be able to gain respect. Ling Han used his blood and strong will to obtain something that his predecessor had longed for the most. Respect. This was also the reason why Ling Han had stubbornly decided to fight this battle, and even chosen such a stupid method, a head-on clash. Of course, only he was aware that his current condition was not as horrible as everyone was thinking. Indestructible Heaven Scroll was circulating within his body and continuously healing his injuries, so they looked much worse than they in fact were. However, even if they already somewhat recovered by now, the injuries he suffered were in no way faked. He was in agonizing pain, as if a fire was slowly burning up his spirit, but it was also this pain that allowed him to erupt with power that far exceeded his actual cultivation level. He had to continuously take return origin pills, battle and keep up the continuous circulation of Indestructible Heaven Scroll. All this led to too large a depletion of his origin power. Ling Han was repeatedly forced to retreat, but he would keep on charging back into battle. As his fresh blood splattered, his indomitable willpower had affected a large part of the surrounding crowd. Some of the girls had even started shedding tears, asking Ling Han to stop fighting. Why won't you fall? The longer Qing Xiang fought, the more flustered he became. How could Ling Han be so determined? Why was it that, no matter how much he was wounded, he refused to fall? This fight put a great pressure on Qing Xiang. The power of the seventh layer of body refining tier was enough to be a threat to him, and with the repeated confrontations between them, his internal organs were also boiling over, causing him extreme discomfort. He roared and attacked with both his fists. He had finally used a martial arts skill, wanting to take down Ling Han as fast as possible. It was one of Qing Clan's special skills, expert armed fist. Double peaks piercing the ear. A martial artist that uses martial arts skills and a martial artist that does not are at two completely different levels of power. Just like cultivation techniques, martial arts skills could also be categorized into heaven, earth, black and yellow grades respectively. A good yellow grade martial arts skill can roughly double the user's power. Every major grade was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium, and low. For example, a yellow grade low-level martial arts skill would increase the user's power by around 30%. A medium level one would be able to raise the user's power by around 40 to 60%, while a high-level skill would increase the user's power around 70 to 100%. The expert armed fist was a yellow grade medium level martial arts skill. It could increase the user's power by around 50%, and the last 3 secret moves could increase the user's power by up to 60%. Ling Han knew countless martial arts skills, even the rarely seen heaven-grade high-level martial arts skill. She knew 7 of them, and each could increase the user's power by 10 times. However, due to the limitations of his current power level, he had no way to use these skills. It was not just heaven-grade skills that he couldn't use. Even earth-grade or black-grade skills were also out of the question for him due to his current limited cultivation. So, he could only use yellow-grade martial arts skills. To use black-grade martial arts skills, the user had to at least have the cultivation level of Gushing Spring tier. He tightened both fists, and moved into an attacking stance. High-level yellow-grade martial arts skill, Dashing Panther Fist. Pung! A loud noise was heard, and the 2 fighters had already exchanged their attacks. Their speed was extremely fast. Aside from Lu Yutong, only a few of the students who happened to have the cultivation of the 9th layer of body refining tier could see it clearly. Meanwhile, the majority of the crowd could only see that, after this confrontation, Qing Xiang's body somehow flew outwards. See! Everyone in the area was struck speechless as they sharply breathed in. Qing Xiang had actually flown out due to the force behind Ling Han's attack. What kind of unfathomable event was this? Meanwhile, even though Ling Han's body was entirely covered in fresh blood, he had only taken a few steps backward. What a grand reversal of the situation! What was going on? Qing Xiang had had the upper hand all this while, so why was it that he was actually horribly defeated once he used a martial arts skill? But no matter how far their thoughts traveled, none of them would be able to guess that Ling Han had just used a high-level yellow-grade martial arts skill. How could that be possible? Even the 2 great clans of Grey Cloud Town only possessed medium-level yellow-grade martial arts skills. If an ordinary person managed to learn a low-level yellow-grade martial arts skill, he'd already die happy. Only Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes flashed with understanding. She was the only person who clearly knew that 3 mysterious arts Ling Han taught her was a heaven-grade cultivation technique. Thus, what would be strange about Ling Han knowing a high-level yellow-grade martial arts skill? Qing Xiang moaned, wanting to get back up. However, the power behind Ling Han's attack was really terrifying. Even just moving caused him to continuously throw up blood. Just now, when they repeatedly exchanged their attacks, Qing Xiang's internal organs had already suffered from huge tremors, and the one attack just moments ago had immediately caused all the damage he had already sustained to blow up. This was a deciding attack that transformed quantity into quality. No, this isn't possible. Cheng Hao's expression was one of utter disbelief. His older brother was an elite of the 9th layer of body refining tier. How could he lose to a piece of trash? This was definitely not real. Ling Han walked towards Qing Xiang. With every step, the injuries he had suffered were quickly healing. Once he was right in front of Qing Xiang, all the injuries were fully healed, a testament to the great power of indestructible heaven scroll. I've lost. With everyone looking at them, there was no way for Qing Xiang to deny the fact that he had lost. He glared ferociously at Ling Han, his face filled with denial. He could not understand how Ling Han had defeated him. Ling Han slowly raised his leg, moving it above Qing Xiang. What are you planning to do? Qing Xiang could not help revealing a fearful expression. Was Ling Han planning to step on his face? Don't go too far. Too far? Ling Han snorted, one foot already firmly placed on Qing Xiang's face. You, as a cultivator of the 9th layer of body refining tier, fighting with me, it isn't considered too far? The first thing your younger brother told me was to get lost, and the first thing you did was to accuse me of using despicable means. Isn't that considered too far? So you're the only ones allowed to do as you like? There is no such logic on this world. Since your skills are inferior, you should speak less rubbish. He put more strength into his foot and Qing Xiang immediately let out a pained groan. However, what he felt more was shame he had actually been trampled underneath someone's foot. Furthermore, this person was the publicly acknowledged trash of the academy. Of course, after today, Ling Han would definitely be able to clear his name as a piece of trash, but this all came at the price of stepping on Qing Xiang's face. This was even more unacceptable to Qing Xiang. People in the surrounding area too were lost for words. Before this, they had only hoped that Ling Han would emerge victorious, but who amongst them had truly believed that Ling Han would win? They could not help recalling Lu Yutong's words in less than 3 months, Ling Han would become an existence that all of them could only look up to. Perhaps, 3 months might not even be necessary. Presently, there was already quite a number of them looking up to him. Ling Han, you will definitely regret this. Qing Xiang said in a furious, poisonous voice. To actually be trampled beneath the foot of a piece of trash, this was a shame that he would never be able to clear from his reputation. Is that so? Ling Han smiled faintly, this kind of threat was completely meaningless on him. Beg for mercy, he said, if your attitude is sincere enough, I will spare you, otherwise, you may have to lie down here for quite a long time. Qing Xiang felt as if he was about to explode. Ling Han actually wanted him to beg for mercy in front of all these people? Chapter 20, Pill Concoction. If you're not going to beg for mercy, then just continue to lie down there. Lying down is nothing too tiring, anyway. Ling Han spoke calmly. He has always been the kind of person to return the kindness of others tenfold, however, he was also the type that, if offended, would return it back by 10 times as well. Since Qing Xiang and his brother wanted to bully him, then he would trample all over them, making them into complete fools. Lying down isn't tiring? Lying down indeed was not tiring, but if there was a foot stepping on your face, then the issue was no longer about whether it was tiring or not. Qing Xiang gritted his teeth tightly to the point that even his gums started bleeding. Caw caw caw, the grinding of his teeth could clearly be heard. If he could, he really wanted to tear Ling Han into a million pieces, but for now, he could only lower his prideful head and say, I'm sorry, please, spare me. You're speaking too softly, I can't hear you, Ling Han said calmly. I'm sorry, please spare me. Qing Xiang cried out loudly. As these words left his mouth, he felt as if his entire person was about to fall apart. All his pride, dignity, and self-esteem as the eldest young master of the Qing clan had all dispersed like the popping of a bubble along with this plea for mercy. Be more sensible in future, there are some people that you can't afford to offend. Ling Han said, taking back his leg. You should feel fortunate that I'm in a generous mood now. This was considered generous? Everyone was lost for words. Qing Xiang was not Qing Hao, he was the eldest young master of the Qing clan. To shame him in such a public setting was the same as slapping the whole Qing clan. This would definitely not be settled peacefully. There would definitely arise a fierce battle between the Cheng and the Ling clans. It might even become a blood feud between the two clans. It would become complete chaos. Shen Ziyan looked on, her white teeth biting fiercely on her red lips. Her current feelings were indescribably complex. They were both in the 9th layer of body refining tier, but there was a large gap between their individual ability. For example, she too had defeated many experienced martial artists in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so even if Ling Han was able to defeat Qing Xiang, that did not mean that he could defeat her. But the problem was, what was Ling Han's current cultivation level? When this guy too rose up to the 9th layer of body refining tier, who amongst those of the whole body refining tier would be able to fight with him on an equal footing? To be invincible amongst those of the same tier, that was the quality of a ruler. No, she definitely did not have any regrets. This was a piece of trash that she had already rejected a few years ago. A piece of trash that could only look up to her throughout his whole life. Ling Han walked out of the martial training court, Lu Yutong by his side as per usual. The two strolled around the academy for a while. After that, they sat down beneath a large tree. Leaning against the tree trunk, neither of them spoke. After a while, Lu Yutong finally couldn't bear it anymore and said, "I never thought that you had such poor eyes, to actually like that kind of shallow, self-centered girl." Ling Han couldn't hold back his hearty laughter. He turned towards her and said, "My little attendant girl, are you jealous?" Who'd be jealous? A red blush rose up on Lu Yutong's beautiful face, making her even more beautiful. Don't delude yourself. Hey, is that any way to speak to your master? Ling Han laughed. Teasing this little attendant girl of his was really quite interesting sometimes. Lu Yutong rolled her eyes, but very quickly changed the topic, and said, "Do you plan to continue to stay in Grey Cloud Town?" This place really was too small to fit the dragon that Ling Han was. Ling Han laughed and said, "I'll go take a look at Huyang Academy after a while. Father hopes that I can go there to step on the faces of the so-called geniuses there." Lu Yutong was struck speechless, before saying, "You can't defeat even me now, and you actually want to go to step all over all the geniuses of Huyang Academy? You should be aware that I am not the strongest fighter in Huyang Academy." "You'll see when we get there." Ling Han no longer spoke any grand words. Only he himself was aware of the great, terrifying potential that he possessed. When the sun had set, the two returned to the Ling clan residence. "You little brat dash," just as they were entering the main hall, they saw Ling Dongxing striding towards them, his expression extremely grim. At first, Ling Han thought that his skipping class today was discovered by his father. Just when he was about to say something, Ling Dongxing had already rushed to him and embraced him tightly before laughing heartily and saying, "You thrashed the two brats from the Qing clan, yet you didn't immediately return to inform your old man and let me be happy too." Ling Han released the breath he was holding before he said, "Then, father, how did you find out?" "This is no small matter, how could I not find out about it after such a long while?" Ling Dongxing stopped his hearty laughter, regained his serious expression and said, "Honor, you really show much promise. The 4th layer of body refining tier actually defeated the 9th layer of body refining tier. However, this is much too shocking. I'm worried that some people would spare no expense just to eliminate you." Ling Han nodded. Most people's attitudes towards geniuses would be filled with admiration and respect, but he no longer belonged to the level of geniuses. Rather, he was more like a freak, to an inconceivable extent at that. "I've released information saying that you're actually in the 7th layer of body refining tier. You had just deliberately kept a low profile in the past," Ling Dongxing continued. This kind of explanation was actually full of gaps. After all, keeping a low profile and being trash were two different matters. But when compared with the event when a person only in the 4th layer of body refining tier defeated the 9th layer of the body refining tier, wouldn't this explanation be easier to accept for the public? Moreover, the strength Ling Han displayed in the last stages of the fight was the 7th layer of the body refining tier, so this kind of explanation would be easier to believe. You don't have to go to the academy tomorrow to avoid others from seeing any discrepancies, Ling Dongxing said. Anyone of the element gathering tier would be able to tell with one look what Ling Han's actual cultivation level was. If that happened, the lie would immediately be exposed. This was exactly what Ling Han wanted. However, the problem now was that he could not only not go the academy, he couldn't even leave the clan residence. Because he had played too much today, there would definitely be a lot of interested parties in Grey Cloud Town. There may even be some who would watch out for his appearance from nearby the Ling clan residence. There was only one solution, and that was to have his actual cultivation level really reach the 7th layer of body refining tier. In this way, the lie would become the truth. Since he couldn't leave the residence anyways, Ling Han decided to place his full focus on cultivating. Ling Dongxing was in full support of this, and under Ling Han's request, he provided him with a large amount of monetary funds. Meanwhile, Ling Han had Lu Yutong go purchase medicinal ingredients as he would be personally concocting an alchemical pill. The alchemical pill that Ling Han wanted to concoct was named the Little Cloud and Water Pill. Taking this pill would greatly increase the cultivation speed of a martial artist in body refining tier. While this pill could be bought, the medicinal effects were too poor. Ling Han had taken one, and it was at most only half as good as the one he concocted. You can do a lot of things if you have enough money. Lu Yutong very quickly returned with the medicinal ingredients Ling Han had requested, also bringing with her an alchemy furnace. It's a bit challenging for a martial artist at 4th layer of body refining tier to concoct pills, Ling Han murmured. Ordinarily, one could only start concocting pills once they reached the 7th layer of body refining tier, at least. Otherwise, if there was not enough origin power to support the concocting process, one would not be able to continue concocting when they reach the advanced stage of the process. Thus, the result would naturally be failure. Looks like I have to simultaneously take return origin pills and concoct the pill. He skillfully separated the various ingredients, his hands moving at such an extremely fast pace that Lu Yutong, who had been standing at the side, felt that her eyes were blurring. Now, she finally believed that Ling Han knew how to concoct pills and was not just knowledgeable in the theory of alchemy. Was there anything this guy didn't know? Ling Han threw several medicinal ingredients into the furnace. However, he did not dump everything inside. He had only threw about 1/3 of the ingredients on hand, then his right hand jolted, he gave a snort, and suddenly a flame appeared on his extended palm. Ignition. This was the basic ability every alchemist should have. It was also why every alchemist needed to have a fire alignment spirit base. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.